If it weren't for support from above, their Murong family would have long been kicked out of the 4 most influential families. Therefore, when Sealed Dragon Domain's secret territory opened this time, they spent so much of Murong family's resources and human labor. They wished to obtain magic weapons and spiritual medicines in order to expand Murong Manor's strength. He didn't expect that even Murong family's strongest military strength ate a loss when entering inside. Now, he was the sole martial artist at Gold Core stage, and his cultivation stage had only been obtained through the use of pills. It was so bad that even the businesses under Murong family were becoming restless. And it was just in this time of danger that the Black Law Protector gave them the pill prescription to cold food. Murong Feng was originally a pre-master level refining pharmacist. When he had gotten his hands on the prescription for the cold food pill, he was simply overjoyed. As long as they got their hands on this prescription, they would be able to refine a steady supply of these pills. How could Murong family not become stronger then? Even Murong family didn't have any martial artists at Gold Core stage to oversee things. He was confident that having cold food pills in his hand would be able to have 10 or 100 Gold Core stage martial artists bowing to them. Now, after refining these cold food pills for a short month, Murong Feng was confident that he could already see the day when he would win success and recognition. That cold food pill had the ability to upgrade one's cultivation in a short period of time. But this cold food pill was also highly poisonous and able to silently attract people, causing them to become depraved. As long as someone took the cold food pill to a certain degree, they would become dependent and would find it hard to stand the withdrawal stage of the drug, regardless of their cultivation level. By that time, forget about even asking them to buy the pill using crystal stones. Even if Murong Feng asked them to kill people and commit arson, they wouldn't even hesitate to do it. Even now, you can see that all the people who have purchased the cold food pill haven't stopped buying them. In order for more people to become addicted to it, Murong Feng even sent some free cold food pills to outstanding youths from influential families and sects, earning their thanks and favor. Once the right time arrived, these people would become their puppets and involuntarily sacrifice themselves for Murong family. It was just that the materials needed to refine cold food pill were extremely rare and the process of refining the pills weren't easy either. Adding on to this is the fact that Murong Feng getting his hands on the pill prescription for cold food also came with a price. Murong family had to give the Black Law Protector an enormous amount of cold food pills each month. This allowed Murong Feng to pass these several days without pain and happiness. Apart from venting his feelings out on Gu Yulan and Murong Lufeng by torturing them, he spent the rest of his time in the refining room refining the cold food pills. Therefore, he was even ignorant of the situation regarding Murong Qianjian going to Xingde Hall and losing his life. Murong Feng just brought the materials into the refining room when he suddenly heard a miserable scream from outside the refining room. Immediately following this, a bloody light spilled onto the doors and window and the originally tightly closed doors were energetically pushed open. Murong Feng's face deepened and the pressure from his body immediately emerged. Wanton, who dares? He was in the middle of his sentence when he found that no more sounds were coming out of his mouth. His eyes went wide and his whole face was full of disbelief. It was as if his voice had been cut off and couldn't be used again. All Murong Feng saw was a youth carrying a sword slowly walking in through the door. The man's features were romantic, his peach blossom eyes felt as if they sucked in people's souls, yet they still kept a cold light in them. But a sinister-looking scar rested on this man's face. It horizontally ran from his forehead, passing by his nose, and to his cheeks. He held onto a long sword as he slowly walked inside. His clothes lifted up without wind and he held an unspeakable confidence that was clearly distinguished. He carried a feeling of frostiness and looked like a demon that had walked on red lotus petals to come here. At the first glance Murong Feng took at this man, he cried out in fear, "How come you're here, Murong Lufeng?" Immediately after uttering his question, he suddenly realized. The Murong Lufeng in the prison just then was a fake. He didn't doubt or guess this. He was certain that this was true. When he saw the coldness that enveloped Gu Liufeng's person, he realized that the real Gu Lufeng wouldn't show frightened or pleading expressions, even if his whole body was filled with bruises. And he definitely wouldn't be scared, crying, and begging for forgiveness. You would be able to identify the true Gu Lufeng by just looking at his eyes. They were clear, fervent, and decisive. Naturally, his eyes were very different from Murong family's, so much so that Murong Feng even loathed them. After thinking to thus far, Murong Feng suddenly became full of alarm. His eyes were wide with panic, and with a trembling voice, he asked, "If you're here, then who is the Murong Lufeng in the prison?" Gu Lufeng arrogantly looked at Murong Feng and coldly laughed at him. "Murong Feng, you hid day after day in here, refining pills. Don't tell me that you didn't feel that you haven't seen your beloved son and wife for so many days?" Murong Feng's temple palpitated, and he recalled that Madame Murong's servant girl had told him several days before that both Madame Murong and Murong Linfeng were missing without a trace. At the time, his hands were full with refining pills and didn't have time to pay attention to some missing person. All he thought was that the two of them had gone somewhere to relieve their boredom. Could it be that wasn't it? If it wasn't, where could they have gone? Gu Lufeng lowly began to laugh. His laugh was laced with evil intentions. "What? You still haven't figured it out? Or could it be that you still don't want to believe things when they're right in front of you? To tie a man up with black iron chains, to scald and whip him day and night, and to lock a woman in a tiny suitcase and arbitrarily bully and humiliate her in that dusky dungeon. Murong Feng, you're very clear on those feelings, right? But unknowingly, that person you scalded and whipped was your beloved son. The woman that you locked in a tiny suitcase and tortured until she turned into an idiot is your first wife. Who knows what you must be feeling now? Ha ha ha, no. This isn't possible. This can't be possible." Murong Feng suddenly let out a hysterical shout and threw himself at Gu Lufeng. "You vile son, it was you, this vile son, that caused me to bring harm to Linfeng. You made me bring harm to Linfeng's life." Just thinking about the fact that he had just sent his own beloved son to that perverted Mr. Liao to play with, caused Murong Feng to feel as if his whole world had been shaken. His heart felt as if it had just been torn to shreds. Gu Liufeng's eyes burst with burning flames, but when he spoke, his words were actually icy cold. "Oh? So your son was actually tortured to death by you? Big congratulations to you. You thought that the person you were torturing was Murong Lufeng, so you didn't care about his life or death. You could stare on blankly as he fell into the pits of hell, suffered torture, and died? Murong Feng, you're truly a good father." Murong Feng hysterically said, "You're a lowly type of person, you were born from a slut. I've never regarded you as my son, I only looked at you as another chess piece in my hands. If I want you alive, you'll live, if I want your death, you'll die." Just as he finished saying these words, he clapped his hands. Suddenly, a figure rushed out from a secret door located behind the pill stove and flashed over to Gu Lufeng. On the spot, Gu Lufeng rolled out of the way and was just about to retaliate. But when he saw the person in front of him, he involuntarily let out a cry of surprise. "Jiao Jiao? One?" The person that holding onto a knife and in the process of attacking him had lifeless eyes and a face full of unhealed scars. If it wasn't his Jiao Jiao, Gui Dao, then who was it? One Jiao Jiao, maternal uncle. However, Gui Dao seemed to have completely lose consciousness and looked as if he didn't even hear Gu Liufeng's voice. With the knife in his hand lifted and all the spiritual power he had in him channeled into it, he faced Gu Lufeng and ruthlessly hacked in his direction. In the moment of life and death, Heshi's figure appeared, like a demon, beside Gu Liufeng's body. In one swift motion, she dragged him behind her body. At the same time, the purple vine came out and blocked Gui Dao's blow. Heshi looked back to see Gu Liufeng's dazed expression and couldn't help but coldly remind him, "What are you still dazed about, Gu Lufeng? Gui Dao is already being controlled by him. Do you want Murong Feng to have his way?" When Gu Lufeng had been scolded by Heshi, he suddenly returned to his senses. Sure enough, he saw that Gui Dao's movements were sluggish and his eyes were vacant. Not only this, he also saw that he was clearly at gold core stage, yet he wasn't able to display that strength. It was clear that he had been controlled. Moreover, it wasn't just an ordinary control over a slave. Gu Lufeng tightened his fists. He didn't expect that the Jiao he had intentionally sent to the outskirts to recuperate would ultimately end up in Murong Feng's hands. No wonder he hadn't received any replies from Gui Dao after sending multiple letters after he had rescued his mother. When Murong Feng saw Gu Lufeng seething with anger, he couldn't help but laugh and sneer at him. Do you wish to know how I captured this man? When he heard that you were imprisoned by me, he foolishly ran over here to rescue you, all by himself. In the end, he just happened to have gotten into the Black Law Protector's hands. Death was near from him, yet this man was still yelling out your names, Gu Lufeng and his mother's. That type of manner is truly nauseating. But that's all in the past. Nowadays he's my puppet. If I order him to kill people, he'll kill people. If I tell him to go die, he'll go die. When he finished speaking, the spiritual power in his body flowed out and he coldly ordered Gui Dao, go and kill those two for me. Don't be stingy with your life, fight as if your life depends on it. When Gui Dao heard Murong Feng's words, he looked like a puppet that had just been switched on. The knife in his hand raised and he ruthlessly chopped down at Gu Lufeng. Gu Lufeng raised his long sword several times to retaliate, but when he saw his Jiao's face, he couldn't help but lower his sword again and blindly evade his attacks. All the while he was shouting out, Jiao, I'm Lu Feng. Quickly wake up. Haha, wake up? Don't dream. Murong Feng loudly laughed. Who let him have such bad luck and made him bump into the Black Law Protector? Nowadays he's long since already lost his soul and become a mindless battle puppet. It's better if you wait until your next lifetime for him to wake up. Haha, Gu Lufeng looked at Murong Feng with scarlet red eyes and pounced on him. Murong Feng, you brute. I'm going to kill you. However, a knife quickly cut horizontally in front of him, blocking his road. Gui Dao was fighting like his life was on the line. Unless Gu Lufeng moved to kill him, he would be unable to forcefully make him withdraw. Gu Liufeng's heart was filled with discontentment and hatred, but he couldn't vent his feelings. It caused him to want to dismember Murong Feng into 1,000 pieces. Suddenly, he heard Heshi's clear and cold voice sound out from beside him. I'm stalling Gui Dao, you go capture Murong Feng. Regardless of what disease it is, capture the person and clearly look into it before making any other decision. If you act so impulsive and don't form a plan, aren't you just falling right into Murong Feng's calculations? Gu Lufeng heaved a sigh and the anger and franticness in his heart slowly washed away and he became serene. That's right, he had Shiyu by his side. As long as Shiyu's here, Jiao had a chance to be saved. Even if Jiao's soul was lost and he was unable to recover, he will certainly make Murong Feng, that brute, pay the price. When he thought of this, an ominous glint sparked in Gu Liufeng's eyes. Seconds later, he disappeared from where he originally stood, like a phantom. At first, Murong Feng was looking incredibly carefree as he stood there. Then, all of a sudden, he saw Gu Lufeng disappear and then saw his figure flash moments later. To his surprise, Gu Lufeng appeared not even 5 meters away from him. Murong Feng paled from fright and took out his magic weapon, completely flustered. He was the most skilled at refining pills in Murong family, even his cultivation level was only as a result of pills. He was gold core stage, but in reality, he wouldn't even be able to stand his ground under the attacks of someone at the initial stage of gold core stage. And what about Gu Lufeng? His cultivation level was a result of a secret technique with the cost of burning away his life in order to forcibly rise in level. However, he had gone through a period of time that was filled with countless battles and self-discipline. He was also at the summit of Gold Core stage. How could Murong Feng, this coward, be his match? Therefore, even a mere encounter with Gu Lufeng had Murong Feng wanting to shout for Gui Dao to come, protect him. But before he could order Gui Dao to do so, he felt a pain emerge from his thigh. Immediately after, his entire person was ruthlessly thrown to the floor. Natural silks, 1, shot out from Gu Liufeng's hands and in the blink of an eye, Murong Feng was sturdily tied up with silks. On the other hand, Gu Yidao and Heshi were engaged in an intense knife fight. But, in the end, a puppet was a puppet. Therefore, all his movements were mechanical and easily predictable. Even if he was at Gold Core stage, he was nothing more than a paper tiger. He only had to dodge a few times before she quickly found the hole in Guidao's fighting. After Guidao swung his knife at her once more, her purple vine suddenly came out and tightly bound Guidao's hands together. Guidao began to violently struggle once he was bound by the purple abyss vine. He took the opportunity to run forward with a silver needle in hand, accurately sticking it into the back of his head. Not even a moment later, the originally struggling Guidao slowly calmed down and eventually fell into a deep sleep. Gu Lufeng immediately threw Murong Feng, who had been tied up by the natural silks, to the side and hurried over to Guidao's side. He anxiously asked He, "Shiyu, is my Jiu still savable?" He regained her examining brain domain's spiritual power and knit her brow. "We have to wait until we get back in order to be able to clearly grasp the current situation. But upon my initial examination, I found that his brain domain seemed to have been dug around by someone and thrown into chaos. But, if his mind has truly been taken by someone, I'm afraid that even if I can keep him alive, it'll be very hard for him to return to his original state." When Gu Lufeng heard Heshi's verdict, his whole face became lifeless and he started to shake. Then he suddenly stood up and rushed over to Murong Feng. He firmly grabbed him by the collar and sternly asked, "Murong Feng, what exactly did you do to my Jiu?" After being shaken, Murong Feng's vision blurred. Furthermore, the pain coming from the wound on his thigh caused him to grimace in pain. Gu Lufeng firmly punched him in the face and shouted out a warning, "Murong Feng, if you don't speak, trust me, I'll kill you right now." Hi. Murong Feng fell into a fit of heavy coughing. He looked at Gu Lufeng with eyes brimming with hatred and resentment. "You bast, don't tell me you wish to commit patricide?" "Patricide?" Gu Lufeng acted as if he had heard the world's biggest joke. Blood rushed to his eyes and his face was full of taunting. "Murong Feng, do you think you're worthy of being my father? Does a father watch as his own son is being abused and stand by like a bystander? Does a father watch as his own child is being assaulted and indifferently watch on? And what father would ignore his own child's face in front of his mother, even going as far as to blackmail him? And what father would whip his own child and press a flat iron on his own child countless times, all in the name of forcing secrets out of his child? 1. Natural silks, silk that comes from silkworms. K. Silk created through natural processes. Murong Feng, you're such a brute, yet you actually still dare to call yourself my father? I see that you're really unworthy of being called a person. Murong Feng's eyes were red due to Gu Lufeng. He seemed like he had seen an evil spirit and had been scared out of his wits. His body could only recoil backwards. But he suddenly seemed to have thought of something. He raised his voice and said, "Even if these scenarios are true, so what? It can't change the fact that I'm your father. The blood flowing in your body is my blood. The skin on your body was something I gave you. Would you be alive on this world without me? I can treat you however I want to treat you. These are the rights I'm privy to. If you were to kill me, you would be branded with the accusation of patricide. You wouldn't be able to wash this crime off your body in your whole lifetime. In the future, you'd face heaven's wrath. Yes, heaven's wrath." During their promotion, every martial artist had to overcome their own demons. The higher the martial artist's cultivation was, the stronger their demons were. At the moment, Gu Lufeng was at the summit of Gold Core stage. Sooner or later, he would have to face the point at which he broke through to nascent soul stage. At that time, his crime of patricide would most likely become his scariest demon. When Murong Feng thought of this point, he thought he had figured out Gu Liufeng's fatal weakness. He suddenly burst into laughter and was unable to continue arrogantly spewing words. "There's also that slut Gu Yulan. I allowed her the chance to hand the things over, but she actually didn't agree to living or dying. She even wanted to elope with another man. But can she run away? What chastity does she have in front of my face? In the end, she ate the cold food pill and turned into a slut. In order to obtain a cold food pill, she obediently knelt in front of me and licked my leg, begging me to hand one over to her. Even when I sent her to the Black Law Protector, she still obediently lied under 3 men and moaned. No wonder she bore such a disgraceful, lowly breed of person like you. She's a loose woman. Gu Lufeng suddenly extended his arm out to ruthlessly pinch Murong Feng's neck. His eyes were bloody red and the veins on his hand became prominent. Murong Feng's eyeballs protruded out when he was pinched by Gu Lufeng. Challenging words still spit out from his mouth. You dare! Patricide! Heaven's wrath! Slender, white jade-carved hands softly pressed down on Gu Liufeng's veiny hand. A pure cold voice quietly said, Gu Lufeng, don't be impulsive, I still have things to ask him. Gu Lufeng took a deep breath before releasing his hand. Murong Feng fell to the floor with a loud bang. He let out a lung-splitting cough and still continued to rain down curses on Gu Lufeng. Unfilial son. Beth. Hi, you're disgraceful, you don't deserve a good death. Hi. He still hadn't finished speaking when a purple vine came out from Heshi's hands and ran over to Murong Feng, ruthlessly whipping his face. Murong Feng let out a brief shriek and looked at Heshi with bitter eyes. He opened his mouth and started speaking, You? He didn't get to finish his words before the purple vine struck at his face again, followed by a loud sound. Then, the sound of vomiting came after as Murong Feng spit out blood and several shattered teeth. If you looked at him right now, you would see his face full of alarm. Heshi lightly laughed and warned, If you curse myself or Gu Lufeng again, I won't mind completely knocking all your teeth out. Murong Feng's entire body shook and he felt a scorching hot pain emerge on his face. After a long time passed, he rushed to Heshi and angrily yelled, I'm warning you guys. If you guys kill me, you'll regret it later on. If you guys killed me, you wouldn't be able to run away. Heshi's face filled with contempt and she sneered at him, cutting him off. Will regret it? Based on your Murong manner, that can't even be seen publicly? Or is it based on Murong Hai and Murong Zhangfeng who have both turned into watery blood in Sealed Dragon Domain's secret territory? At first, Murong Feng turned completely blank. Then his face greatly changed. Despite the fact that he was bound together, he still threw himself at Heshi. You know how they both died? Was it you that killed them? Slut, exactly what kind of person are you? When Murong Feng uttered these words, the purple vine suddenly perked up and firmly landed a slap on Murong Feng's face. This time, Murong Feng's nose was fractured, causing him to start screaming in pain. Heshi coldly said, Right now, it's I who's interrogating you. You say that we won't be able to run. Who's the person behind Murong family? Is it the person who wears that gray cloak? At first, Murong Feng was still letting out miserable screams, but when he heard the last part of Heshi's question, he became startled. How could you know? You've seen him? Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something and his face greatly changed. That night, the Black Law Protector's feeling of someone spying in the manor, that was you, wasn't it? Exactly what type of person are you? You're clearly at Foundation establishment stage, yet you're able to evade the Black Law Protector's probing. The Black Law Protector is an expert at nascent soul stage. Nobody can evade him. Black Law Protector? Heshi knit her brow. He's the same person who also holds Jiai Dao's soul? That's right. Murong Feng clenched his teeth before saying, The Black Law Protector has a refining soul banner on him. It's an extremely difficult to deal with magic weapon. That Gu Yidao overestimated himself and ran over here to rescue Murong Linfeng, that animal. Consequently, he had been sacrificed by the Black Law Protector to his banner and had his soul refined. Since his soul has been completely taken away, Gu Yidao can be considered immortal. Then why is he a puppet now? Murong Feng's face held hesitation. He didn't wish to reveal this. But he saw the purple vine, in Heshi's hand, perking up and became scared again. He could feel an unbearable pain bursting from his face and was scared out of his wits, so he promptly answered, I'll speak. The Black Law Protector has a Mr. Liao by his side who's an expert at the technique of refining puppets. He frequently snatches good-looking boys and girls. After picking and mending them, their souls would go to the Black Law Protector's refining soul banner. All that they would be left with would be one soul in their body. A body with only one soul won't die, but it would lose wisdom and become muddle-headed. Mr. Liao uses this special method to refine people into puppets and leave them by their side. Gu Yidao is a battle puppet that I paid a high cost for Mr. Liao to personally come help me turn him into one. All the people that were refined into puppets are unable to return to their normal state. Even if the puppet restriction was removed, they would just become muddle-headed, like an idiot, for their entire lifetime. I'll kill you. Murong Feng's words made Gu Lufeng turn berserk. His entire person was practically about to pounce on Murong Feng and ruthlessly tear this sickening, callous, and selfish man apart. Heshi grabbed Gu Lufeng to stop him and lowered her head to look at Murong Feng. What's the origin of the Black Law Protector? Where does the cold food flower come from? When Heshi initially entered this room, she spotted beautiful and tender cold food flowers being raised. Cold food flowers looked extremely similar to poppies, but these poppies had a much larger build than the ones in Heshi's past life. Not only that, the flower's fragrance was strong and the flower itself held a darkness around it. It was clearly a spirit plant connected to darkness. First, Heshi used a hoarding pouch to collect the flower, before she stored it away in her space. When she finished, she came over just in time to see Gu Yidao holding knife as he was just about to strike at Gu Lufeng. She was very curious about this cold food flower. It was a plant connected to such a large amount of darkness, so Heshi could easily guess that such a plant would be impossible to find on Miluo continent nowadays, let alone nurturing it until it bloomed. At the time it was believed that people had 7 souls. People with the correct amount of souls were normal, any less would mean that the person wasn't. When Murong Feng heard Heshi's question, his entire body began to shake and he violently shook his head. I don't know. I only know that the Black Law Protector sent these cold food flowers and the prescription to the pill so that I could refine cold food pills. I truly don't know anything else. It wasn't that he didn't want to say it, it was that he couldn't. Murong Feng was clearer than anyone else on the Black Law Protector's vicious and merciless ways. If he leaked information that shouldn't be leaked, then Murong Feng didn't even dare to imagine the downfall of Murong family. When Heshi heard Murong Feng's denial, her lips picked up in a radiant curve and she asked, her voice clear and pleasant. So you don't know anything, ah? Since you don't know, then what's the point of leaving you alive? Once she said this, the purple vine cheerily turned around, generating flapping sounds, and flew over to Murong Feng. It quickly wrapped around Murong Feng's head and neck and proceeded to relentlessly pull Murong Feng's lips apart. At an unknown time, a singular black pill had already appeared in Heshi's slender, white fingertips. She quickly shot the pill and it accurately fell into Murong Feng's mouth. With all his strength, Murong Feng attempted to struggle against the two, but his hands were already wrapped in the natural silks. How could he fight against the purple abyss vine? All he felt was a pill dissolving down his throat and the following bitter aftertaste that ensued alongside the smell of medicine. After he fully swallowed the pill, the purple abyss vine released him. Murong Feng's entire face was painted with anger and alarm and his eyes were wide open, glaring straight at Heshi. He opened his mouth and was just about to begin cursing at her. Then, a piercing pain erupted from all the bones in his body. Alongside the pain, he heard the frightening sounds of zhi creaking sound in his ear. It felt as if there were countless insects digging into his bones and simultaneously gnawing at them. Murong Feng's face twisted from the pain and he was screaming and rolling about on the floor. The feeling of his bones being slowly gnawed on and his flesh being mixed into the broken bone fragments was too horrible and too painful. However, the strangest part was although that he was clearly experiencing an immense amount of pain, from an outsider's perspective, he didn't have any marks on his body whatsoever. He incessantly beat his own joints and bones, but apart from fracturing them, there was no other way to cease the pain. Spare my life. Spare my life. I'll speak. I'll speak. Murong Feng crawled over to the side of Heshi's leg and begged her in the midst of the waves of pain. At this moment, the terror he held for Heshi far outweighed the terror he felt for the Black Law Protector. Currently, Murong Feng's entire face was already full of mucus and tears, his hands and feet were fractured, and his face held a prominent scar left by the purple abyss vine from earlier. His entire person looked like a sorry figure. His current appearance was far from the one of Murong family's clan head. His heart was brimming with bitter resentment and dread. He vented some of these feelings by fiercely glaring at Gu Lufeng. It was all this unfilial son's fault. If this unfilial son didn't collude with outsiders and scheme against Murong family, his Murong family would have never fallen into such a plight. But once Murong Feng's eyes met with Heshi's smiling ones, his body immediately started trembling again and he didn't dare to hide anything anymore. As it turns out, Murong Manor suddenly lost several elders who were at high-level gold core stage, some 20 years back, and suffered a drastic decline. Many of the owners of businesses Murong family owned began to turn restless. They wanted to replace Murong family. During Murong family's desperate time, a person proclaiming themselves as the Black Law Protector suddenly appeared and he sought out the clan head of Murong family at the time. Their agreement would be able to help Murong family suppress the powers under their family, allowing them to steadily stay in their position as one of the 4 most influential families. The catch was that Murong family had to be their eyes and ears and wholeheartedly swear their loyalty to them. Nobody in Murong family knew exactly what type of person the Black Law Protector was. All they knew was that his cultivation was extremely high. 20 years before his cultivation was already at nascent soul stage. By his side he had a 4th-rank doctor and a Mr. Liao who was an expert in refining puppets. With the Black Law Protector's help, their Murong family was quickly able to establish themselves in Jinling City. And secretly, they began to help the Black Law Protector in all kinds of shady businesses. Every day, their Murong family had to hang up a sign saying that they were recruiting little manservants. They would fetch children from remote mountain areas or from the streets. From these children, they would filter out the ones with spiritual roots and use them as culture fluid for the cold food flowers. Heshi knit her brow and said, "You guys have kidnapped so many children for so long, have you guys seriously not had any parents who came to complain about their children missing?" In response, Murong Feng's head drooped and he quietly said, "Naturally that's happened. If any parents discover any clues, we usually kill their entire family, or perhaps even the entire village. Then we shift the blame onto loose martial artists or bandits. Are you guys even human anymore? Do you have any humanity?" Heshi didn't even respond before Gu Lufeng couldn't take it anymore. He walked over to Murong Feng and firmly kicked him. "Could it be that you guys are the only people on this world and other children and people are nothing more than brutes? Even if they are brutes, that's still a life. Why are you allowed to willfully trample and slaughter them? Murong Feng, are you not scared of meeting retribution? Of not reincarnating after death? Of forever walking the path of a brute?" Murong Feng was only afraid of Heshi. He held much hatred toward Gu Lufeng. So once he heard Gu Liufeng's questions, he immediately answered back with confidence, "All of our actions are for the sake of reviving Murong family. The death of hundreds of those lowly people is the same as the death of hundreds of ants. What worth do they have to be able to receive our guilt and pity? Actually, you're the evil creature here. You clearly possess Murong family's blood, yet you colluded with outsiders and trapped Murong family. You're the one who really deserves to die 1,000 deaths. You brute, you're the one who'll receive retribution." The long sword in Gu Liufeng's hand suddenly transformed in his hand. Step by step, he walked over to Murong Feng. Murong Feng saw that his eyes were even more red than before. It looked like blood was practically about to drip down. And each step Gu Lufeng took, the killing intent on his body became even thicker. This caused his heart to burst with intense fear. He began to wiggle and recoiled backward. "I'm your father. If you kill me, you'll face heaven's wrath. You'll meet countless demons on that day. You'll also fall down." Heshi walked forward a step and held onto Gu Lufeng. She faintly told him, "There's no need to face demons just for a person like this. Let me do it, okay?" "No." Gu Lufeng whirled around to face Heshi. His eyes were burning and there was 20 years' worth of built-up pain and hatred in his face. But more than that, there was determination. You've already done enough for me. I want to personally end this person's life." A sneer appeared on his face. "Do you know how much I abhor my name Murong Lufeng? How much disgust I hold for Murong Feng. But unfortunately his blood flows through my veins. This is a sin I can't avoid. Since it's my crime, let me personally end everything. Let me personally end the cycle of nightmares that have plagued me for the past 20 years. Even if I have to face demons due to this one incident, I won't hesitate. Right after saying this, Gu Liufeng's long sword glinted in the light as it rose up. Then, it chopped down at Murong Feng. Murong Feng's face was filled with fear and despair. He opened his mouth and seemed to have become hysterical. "You'll regret killing me. You'll soon join me, nobody can escape." Ha ha ha. Murong Feng's face felt as if it had a line drawn between the middle of his eyebrows down to his nose. Moments later, Gu Liufeng's long sword came crashing down right at this mark, perfectly splitting his face in half. Boiling blood came sprouting out, splashing right onto Gu Liufeng. It was obvious that he could have dodged all of the blood splashing on him, but he stood completely still, completely expressionless, allowing it to be sprayed onto him. The only thing that changed in him was that the decisiveness in his eyes became more and more apparent as the seconds ticked on. From now on, Murong Liufeng and Murong Manor ceased to exist in this world. There was only the Gu Liufeng who admired and vowed loyalty to Shiyu. Gu Liufeng abruptly turned around and knelt down on one knee in front of Heshi. His sword was propped on the floor and his back was curved. On his face there was sincerity, serenity, and not a trace of humiliation as he thanked, "Thanks to Master for allowing me to take revenge on my greatest enemy. It's just that this subordinate taking his own initiative may have caused heaven to bring her wrath on the day that this subordinate advances in rank to nascent soul stage. At that time, it's quite possible that this subordinate won't be able to advance in rank and will therefore be unable to stay by Master's side." Heshi rubbed the goosebumps on her arm away and quickly interrupted Gu Liufeng. "What nonsense has gotten into you, Gu Liufeng? Have your brains gone rotten after Murong Feng's blood splashed onto you? Can you speak properly?" Unhappy, Heshi rolled her eyes. Following this, her face became dignified. "I've always thought that the words Murong Feng spoke before death's door has some deep meanings. Moreover, I feel a bad premonition. Let's quickly leave." "Oh, depart from here. Where do you guys want to go?" A deep and muffled voice sounded out from the doorway, lacking any prior foreshadowing of its entrance. Gu Liufeng and Heshi's faces both changed and showed displeasure. Without a second thought, both of their figures soared up. The sound of a crash ensued and a large hole appeared on the ceiling of the refining room. Both Heshi and Gu Liufeng's figures jumped onto the roof. However, the newly arrived person's speed was much faster than theirs. In a split second, a gloomy and cold breath enveloped the both of them. The gloomy and cold breath carried a bloody stench and a pressure that suffocated people alongside it. When they lifted their heads to look up, they saw a dark red cloth covering over the sky. And that bloody stench and suffocating pressure was emitting from the middle of this cloth. They could both see that this cloth was just about to drop down and wrap them up. Heshi and Gu Liufeng's faces both immediately became unsightly. Heshi had already begun to bleed from her mouth. This was because her cultivation level was still low. She didn't have the skill to contend against martial artists at nascent soul stage quite yet. Suddenly, the sound of something tearing could be heard. Looking up revealed that the dark red cloth had been cut into 7 or 8 pieces by a long sword. Cut into tatters, each of the pieces were taken away by the wind, blown away to another place. Heshi looked at Wu Exin, who was standing in front of both her and Gu Liufeng, and let loose a breath. Then immediately after, her hand flew to her stomach and she vomited a mouthful of blood. "Shiyu, are you okay?" Gu Liufeng worriedly supported her. Heshi shook her head. "Nothing's wrong. Wu Exin, be careful. This person's cultivation level is higher than yours." Standing in front of Heshi and Gu Liufeng was Wu Exin, who nodded his head at Heshi's previous words. His expression was grave and his eyes held an icy and bloodthirsty glint on them as his gaze landed on the distant male. The male wore clothes made out of ashy, coarse cloth. His body was covered by a black cloak, which had a high collar that covered his face. The only thing exposed were a pair of falcon-like eyes that peered at them from the darkness. It seems like this is the Black Law Protector Murong Feng was mentioning. The cloaked man was currently standing opposite to Heshi, Gu Lu Feng, and Wu Exin. His appearance seemed relaxed and his eyes were brimming full of arrogance as he looked over at them. His eyes slowly shifted over to Wu Xian's body and he softly laughed. You actually have a nascent soul stage expert, no wonder Murong Feng fell. With great difficulty I nurtured that dog for over 10 years, but he was disposed of so quickly, it's such a pity. What price are you guys planning to pay for making me lose such a handy dog? Heshi narrowed her eyes and sneered at him. I imagine your heart would feel more pain over losing those cold food flowers rather than that handy dog, right? You touched the cold food flowers? When the cloaked man heard what she said, he suddenly became angry. He used his divine knowledge to sweep over the room and found no shadow of the cold food flowers. The gaze he looked at Heshi with was as sharp as a sword. It was no longer like the insipid cloud and soft wind one from before. What about the cold food flowers? Naturally they're destroyed. Heshi coldly laughed. Those spiritual plants have the darkness attribute. They have the ability to endanger the world. Are they just supposed to be left to be eaten? I'm sorry, I'm not as abnormal and inhumane as you guys are. You, courting death. The cloaked man let out a strict shout and his figure suddenly flashed from where he was standing and began charging at Heshi. Heshi could already see that this move was far different from the one he used with the red cloth, which was played down. Instead, this one carried anger and a desire to dismember her into 1,000 pieces. Wu Xian's entire body turned into a glowing white light as he soared over to meet the cloaked man head-on. Nascent soul stage level fighting was something that Heshi wasn't capable of participating in yet. Even Gu Lufeng, who was at the summit of Gold Core stage, could only stand by the side and watch on. Even though Gold Core and Nascent Soul were merely a step away from each other, the step was still the distance between heaven and earth. Once someone entered Nascent Soul, they would be considered one of the top strengths in Miluo continent, a supermaster. However, even if Heshi couldn't participate in the fight, it didn't mean she couldn't clearly see the circumstances of the fight. Although Wu Xian's upgrade to Nascent Soul stage had already become stable, this cloaked man had clearly been at Nascent Soul stage for countless years. He was far away from a match Wu Xian could take on. Heshi's brows wrinkled her brows, then seemed to have thought of something. From her space, she took out a golden, long sword and threw it over at Wu Xian, instructing, "This is a replica of Killing Sky Sword. It's suitable to all martial artists with thunder and fire attributes." After she threw the long sword over to Wu Xian, a sudden boom sounded out and Wu Xian flipped over in the air. As he grasped the long sword in his hand, he felt the spiritual power in his body surging and let out a surprised expression. The Killing Sky Sword was a unique, legendary spirit weapon. Its craftsmanship was only secondary to the Sealed Dragon Sword. The replica of the Killing Sky Sword couldn't recreate the same power as the original sword, but compared to ordinary flying swords, its power already far surpassed them. As expected, after Wu Xian began using the Killing Sky Sword, his strength suddenly rose. For a moment, Wu Xian and the cloaked man were evenly matched. And the cloaked man's face changed colors when he saw this new advancement. Whilst he was fighting with Wu Xian, he also began to yell at Heshi, "Youngster, what kind of person are you? The Killing Sky Sword has long been lost. Even the replica of it hasn't been seen in the world for 100 years. How come you have it in your hands?" Chapter 487 Refining Soul Banner. Heshi faintly smiled and said, "I feel like the origins of the cold food flower are even fishier than the Killing Sky Sword, right? This spiritual plant shouldn't even be able to grow in Miluo continent. If you told me how you guys got cold food flowers, then I'll tell you the history of the Killing Sky Sword, okay?" A scowl formed on the cloaked man's face and his mind scattered. In this moment of carelessness, Wu Xian was able to cut through his clothes. The cloaked man retreated several steps back and sneered at Wu Xian. "I'm bored of playing with you. Do you really think you're my opponent?" Wu Xian slowly turned over the qi and blood in his body, mixing them together. His expression remained detached and he didn't bother to pay attention to the man's words. The cloaked man looked at Wu Xian and then looked over at Heshi, who stood behind him. and a bloodthirstiness rose up in his eyes. Since you guys wish to court death, I'll help you guys. In any case, I'm bored of playing. Right after saying this, a small, black banner appeared in the cloaked man's chicken claw-like hands. He began to mutter incantations under his breath. As he was muttering them, the black banner grew larger and larger, until it grew even taller than himself. The cloaked man mischievously let out 2 laughs and touched the banner's icy flagpole. He faintly remarked, "Go ahead, my darling. Lately you haven't had any chance to show off, you must be starved. But this one time should compensate you. You haven't gotten the chance to taste nascent soul stages yet. They taste much more delicious than 100 gold core stages." After saying this, the cloaked man's hand raised and a flash of spiritual energy entered the banner. In a moment, the banner began to shake, and following this, a round black shadow shot out from the banner and flew up into the sky. That black shadow condensed and became thicker, forming into a black devilish face with tusks. Once it was done forming, it faced Wu Xin and rushed at him. In the blink of an eye, the black shadow surrounded Wu Xin. The devilish face opened up a bloody mouth and unceasingly started biting at Wu Xin's body. Every bite the face took, the face grew larger and Wu Xin's breath became weaker. Although the killing sky sword was still in Wu Xin's hand and he was constantly waving it around, it began to wave around slower and slower as the seconds ticked by. Gu Lufeng clenched his teeth and said, "That should be the refining soul banner." The soul refining banner was a sinister magic weapon that grew stronger whenever it engulfed martial artists' souls and essence. The cloaked man began to laugh out loud. "Rest assured, when that youngster has been engulfed, the next ones are you too." After saying this, his figure flashed and his chicken claw-like hands changed into demonic claws. Then he faced Hashi and threw himself at her whilst clawing at her. Bang! A loud sound rang out and the black air suddenly scattered. Even the devilish face turned over and fell 10 feet away. It fell down on the ground and twitched, with a majority the shadows surrounding it even fading out. Hashi then felt a large force pulling herself and Gu Lufeng back a few steps. It felt as if she was able to escape the cloaked man's clutches. Wu Xin stood in front of Hashi and Gu Lufeng. The muscles and bones in his hands and arms were entirely broken and his whole body was filled with bruises. It looked as if he was going to collapse at any moment. "Shui Gongzi, quickly run!" Wu Xin hoarsely shouted. "At most, I can only hold him back for a quarter of an hour." Hashi stared blankly at Wu Xin. It was as if blood had filled her sight, everything turned red and a burst of burning rage filled her. She hated feeling weak and she hated allowing the people by her side receive injuries even more. When the cloaked man saw the devilish face's weak state, he was suddenly furious. He had used countless spirits to fully raise and condense this devilish face. Its face could even rival initial stage of nascent soul stage. But unexpectedly, that repulsive youngster actually dared to risk losing his arm by exploding his spiritual power, which, in turn, caused his devilish face to gain a serious injury. And now, even if it swallowed these 3 youngsters' souls, it would still need to recover for a period before it could return back to its previous state. 1. Yay, paternal grandfather or old man. In this case, he's calling Wu Xin an old man. Thinking up to here, the cloaked man clenched his teeth, then bit down on his tongue, intentionally injuring it in the process. With a mouthful of his own blood essence, he spit it out onto the refining soul banner. "Want to leave? Don't dream. Today, none of you should think of leaving." Once his words went out, the originally weakened and unable to move devilish face suddenly became enveloped in a red light, and a malicious howling and crying face resounded around everyone. The devilish face moved and suddenly soared into the air. Before long it was already rushing over to Wu Xin, ready to begin a second round of attacks. The cloaked man let out a chuckle, then sneered, "I want to see what method you use to defend yourself this time." Wu Xin was unable to lift one of his arms, his spiritual power was practically drained, and his entire body was littered with injuries. When Hashi saw that the devilish face was about to eat Wu Xin's head in one go, she suddenly summoned a golden ball of flames in her hands and flew over to the devilish face. When the cloaked man saw her actions, he began to laugh out loud. Ignorant child, the black devil's face has a spirit body, how could an insignificant fire harm it? But the smile on his face was quickly wiped away. Because once the golden flame made contact with the devilish face, the sound of burning sounded out and the devilish face twisted. It let out a pained expression before trying its best to run away. The cloaked man paled in fear. Spiritual fire? How can this be? You're only at foundation establishment stage. Even if you were able to practice and conjure up heavenly fire, you would still be unable to hurt the devilish face to this degree. Just what type of person are you? The black devilish face was a spirit. It feared all spiritual power attacks, but at the same time, it dirted spiritual power. Adding on to that was his blood essence, which supported the devilish face even further. Even if spiritual fire attacked the devilish face, it was reasonable to assume that his blood essence could dissolve it. But how could the cloaked man have expected the spiritual fire Hashi released to have such high spiritual power and essence purity? His shock didn't last long though. Soon after, the cloaked man burst out into laughter again. Regardless of where your spiritual fire came from, for you to be able to release spiritual fire with such pure essence must mean that your soul is much more solid than that of an ordinary person. As long as my refining soul banner is able to swallow you and that youngster at nascent soul stage, its strength will definitely increase by tenfold. Coming here this time can't be considered a loss. Right after saying this, a black thread flew out from the cloaked man's hands. Before Hashi would react, it had already restricted all of her actions. Zazie, you're now my most precious treasure and the best food for my devilish face. If I were to let you die, where would I find someone with as solid a soul as yourself? Obediently wait here for me, wait for my devilish face to swallow that youngster with nascent soul stage. Then I'll properly receive you. After saying so, the cloaked man's figure flashed and he directly threw himself at Wu Exin. The current Wu Exin was completely spent. He was even unable to use the killing sky sword. Killing him would be a simple feat however. Just as the cloaked man flew up, a strong wind suddenly hit him. Ping was the only sound that was heard, and the cloaked man felt as if he had been hit by an iron board. His entire person fell down and he let out a groan when he hit the floor. My bottle gourd, my fine wine, it all spilled. The entire thing spilled. Outrageous youngster, actually daring to spill my fine wine. Quickly compensate me. Hashi suddenly blanked. She knew this voice and its all too familiar intonation. Sure enough, the wrinkled face of an old man appeared in front of her face, growing larger and larger as the pungent smell of wine hit her in the face. When the old fellow seemed to have clearly seen her, he suddenly let out a laugh. My obedient disciple, how could you be here? How coincidental, too coincidental. Seeing as you can't move, has someone bullied you? You tell me and I'll go hit him for you. 1. Bottle gourd, a type of vine that's grown for its fruit. When harvested young, it can be eaten as a vegetable, and when harvested mature, it can be used as a utensil once dried. After speaking up to here, the old fellow suddenly shook his bottle gourd around and mischievously laughed. However, since your master's wine is gone, shouldn't you, as a disciple, express hey mischievous laughter? For a moment, Hashi was unable to respond. The sudden turnaround was too theatrical. She lowly coughed, untie me first. Okay, but then you have to give me wine, clever disciple. The old man's black hands raised and were just about to move to untie her when he abruptly paused and said, Wrong, clever disciple, you still haven't called me master. If you don't call me master, how can I untie you? I'm only saving my clever disciple. Heshi's mouth twitched and she fiercely stared at him. You're threatening me. Hey, how can that be considered a threat? In the mountain, didn't you agree to pay respects to this old man as your master? When did I agree? The old man's face looked like that of a rascal as he winked and pointed at Wu Exin, beginning to make a fuss. This fellow's injuries aren't shallow. If you don't quickly provide critical care, his cultivation will drop from nascent soul stage. Zaze, how pitiful, how unfortunate there's nobody to save him. Hashi looked over at the bloody and barely breathing Wu Exin and clenched her teeth, spitting out 2 words, Master. 1. Aiya, clever disciple. The old man's eyebrows raised in joy when he heard those 2 words. 1. Come from Hishi's mouth. He waved his hand and the black rope tied around Hishi's body also fell down. Hishi didn't bother to talk to him and quickly walked over to Wu Xian's side. The first thing she did was to give him a pill to swallow. At this point, Wu Xian's mind was already hazy. When he opened his eyes and saw her, he murmured, "Fortunately Wang Fei is fine, otherwise, Master will definitely be worried of your death, fool." Hishi picked up a silver needle and efficiently stuck it into his body so his injury could be prevented from worsening. Then she hoarsely said, "Idiot! Whose life could be more important than your own? You're about to die and yet you're still afraid that Nangong you will be worried." At this moment, the cloaked man that had been knocked away by the bottle gourd had finally stood back up from the roof. He felt dizzy from being knocked, but his body didn't have any injuries. When he saw Hishi, who had been untied, and that crazy old man, he suddenly angrily shouted, "Which smelly old man actually dares to spoil my affairs? Are you tired of living?" The old man clicked his tongue and shook his head in response. "You're a part of the younger generation, how come you lack manners? Don't you understand to respect the old and cherish the young? It was clearly you who had knocked over my wine, isn't it the right thing to pay me back? Zazie, you even dare to plot against my beautiful, clever disciple. Look at you wearing a cloak in the evening, how shameful ah! I see that you must be jealous of my disciple's good looks." This annoying troublemaker directly angered the cloaked man enough for him to want to spit out a mouthful of blood. Heshi's mouth twitched before she interrupted the old man's words. "Master, compared to this fellow, which one of you is stronger?" Since she had already agreed that this old man was his master, Heshi wouldn't be unreasonable anymore. The old man rubbed his bottle gourd and mischievously laughed. "Well, that's hard to say, hard to say. If I drank some wine, this old man would be able to beat 3 cows. If I haven't drank wine, Master knock him down and I guarantee that, in the future, you'll have so much wine that you wouldn't be able to drink it all." "Really? Clever disciple, you better not cheat me." Heshi's hands hugged her chest as she smiled at him. "If I'm cheating you, then you can expel me." "Aiya, how could that be done? You're the clever disciple that I worked so hard to get." 1. Master. In Chinese, master is comprised of 2 characters, shifu. Whilst Heshi and her master were speaking, neither of them tried to conceal their words. This directly caused the cloaked man to become angry again. "You dare underestimate me, directly go and die for me." Right after saying this, bursts of bone-chilling cold wind started up and faced Heshi and everyone else. In response, the old man threw the empty bottle gourd away and his figure disappeared from his original spot. Heshi hadn't even reacted to what he had just done when she suddenly heard ping. Soon after the bitter cold wind dissipated and even the black fog disappeared, leaving nothing else in front of them. That's right, precisely. Nothing was left. The cloaked man's presence had completely disappeared. The old man rubbed his black palm and guiltily looked toward Heshi. With forced laughter he said, "Aiya, it seems like I didn't control my strength and miscalculated." Heshi frowned. "Miscalculated? By how far?" He hiccup. "That." The old man looked at the sky. "Just then I wasn't looking at the direction and didn't see where he flew off to. Ha! So clever disciple, even though I didn't knock him flat. Your master can be considered to have exerted energy, right? Moreover, by the time he falls back onto the ground, he'll definitely fall flat. He wouldn't even be able to crawl back up after 6 hours." About that wine, Heshi narrowed her eyes and silently watched the old man for a long time. She was certain that this old man had deliberately not laid a heavy hand on the cloaked man. She stared at the old man until he nervously scratched his head. Then she loosened her expression and lightly laughed. "Rest assured, there will be plenty of wine. In any event, thanks to Master for saving us." "Aiya, clever disciple, you're too considerate and too filial. Your master loves you the most. Smelly old man, your entire body is full of louse and wine. Quickly get away from me." "Clever disciple, don't be like this. Master likes to hug you, how can you decline?" Do you believe that I won't pour all the wine out in front of your face? Clever disciple, clever disciple. I know my wrongs. You must give fine wine as presents, to one's elders/superiors as a sign of respect, to Master Ah. The fight between Heshi's group and the cloaked man started quickly and also ended quite quickly. However, it still roused up quite a lot of movement. Just speaking of Murong family, a few of their houses collapsed. The children in Murong family had been scared by the shaking and were reduced to shivering in their rooms. None of them dared to step foot outside. When Jin Ling's imperial guards arrived at the scene and saw the terrifying fighting going on, they were filled with fear. How would they dare to continue investigating? So, naturally, this matter remained unsettled. However, who could have thought that Murong Manor would have disappeared just 3 days after the fight occurred at Murong Manor that night? In the span of a night, all of Murong Manor's guards, manservants, servant girls, and children had disappeared without a trace. Even their bones couldn't be found. What was the scariest part of the whole ordeal was that the houses inside Murong Manor all looked as if they had been burned by a fire. Apart from ashes and fallen walls, there was nothing else. Murong family was one of the 4 most influential families in Yanjing City. Yet in a breath's time all of its people had disappeared without even the smallest bit of a trace left behind. This matter left the people of Yanjing City alarmed and restless for a few days. The most worried were the remaining 3 most influential families. Although they were busy with receiving the power of Murong family, they were still wary and fearful. The enemy was just too powerful. They actually dared to thoroughly eliminate Murong family right in front of the imperial guards. Would there be a day when it was their own turn? Chapter 491 Shameless. As Heshi was listening to Shisan's report, a grave expression crept onto her face. By the side, Gu Lufeng raised a cup and lightly drank a sip of tea before smiling and saying, "Their subordinates are truly fast. As long as they're a useless chess piece, they'll be completely and utterly eliminated. It's really ruthless enough, absolute enough." Gu Lufeng switched the topic when he saw concern surface in Heshi's eyes. After passing through this event concerning Murong Manor and Xingde Hall, I'm afraid that they'll soon know that genius Dr. Shi is you. Shisan, you have too many treasures that cause people to become crazy with longing on your hands. In the future, you have to tread carefully. Heshi nodded her head. You can be at ease. I know when I should look after my own hide and when I should press forward and slap faces. If they want the things in my hands, then they should try and see if they have the skills. I want to see if they have the life to come and leave. Gu Lufeng laughed. Sometimes I really don't know where you learned such bizarre words from. Press forward and slap faces. Although these words are vulgar, their meaning is just right. Heshi ignored Gu Liufeng's teasing and looked at Shisan. Is there any other news? Shisan knit his brow and hesitated for a moment before cautiously saying, there is another piece of news. This subordinate doesn't know whether it's fake or true, but one of Xingde Hall's young waiters overheard a customer and merchant, who had come from far away, say these things. The news is about the Ice Fairy Lotus and the King of Hell. Heshi's eyes dimmed and cold air unconsciously emitted from her body. Still, she lightly laughed and said, "Oh, let me hear it." That customer and merchant were saying that around Songming Kingdom and Haoyu Kingdom it's rumored that the Ice Fairy Lotus treated several martial artists who were infected with an odd poison whilst in sealed dragon domain. Those martial artists, their sex, and family members are all extremely thankful toward the Ice Fairy Lotus. They even named her as Xian Nu Ren Doctor. It's heard that because of this matter, the Doctors Association has even promoted her rank and nowadays, she's the highest-ranked doctor in Miluo continent as a 6th-ranked doctor. Heshi was startled when she heard the news. But before she could say anything, Gu Lufeng already erupted into angry words. Does that black lotus flower fairy still want to save face? Obviously it was you, Shiyu, who saved people in 100 Herb Mist. She actually dares to steal all recognition? Has she already forgotten that it was her careless treatment that caused several people to be reduced to puddles of thin blood? How can this woman become shameless to this extent? For a moment Shisan was calm before he suddenly realized that his family's master's contributions had all been claimed by some other woman and immediately became angered. What's up with that bullshit Faria? Why would she falsely claim young Miss contributions? Does she want her face anymore? Could it be that those saved martial artists wouldn't refute her claims? Heshi coldly laughed and her mouth curved, slowly saying, "That's why this news has spread in mainly Tsangming Kingdom and Haoyu Kingdom. Tsangming Kingdom is entirely under Feng family's control. If they wanted to completely control public opinion, it would be an easy thing. And Haoyu Kingdom is very far away from Jinling Kingdom. There were few people from there who came to Sealed Dragon Domain. Even if a few people knew the truth, they wouldn't go against Feng family just for the sake of some insignificant doctor's innocence." Shisan became so angered he clenched his fists and furiously said, "Don't tell me we'll just allow that rotten fairy steal young Miss contributions? Not only this, but nowadays, there's a widespread rumor in Songming Kingdom. Rumors that His Majesty King of Hell admires the Ice Fairy Lotus humanity, benevolence, virtuousness, and kindness. Therefore, he has already intended to bring up marriage with Feng family. But His Majesty King of Hell is clearly acts partial toward you." Gu Lufeng couldn't help but sneer at this. That's right. Anybody who saw that black lotus flower fairy's appearance whilst in 100 Herb Mist must have been experiencing nausea for half a day afterwards. Nangong, you would not be wanting to marry her unless his brain has short-circuited. Shisan was still feeling aggrieved, but that rotten fairy has used your contributions to become a 6th-ranked doctor. I'm too bitter, don't worry about it. Hashi waved her hand and indifferently laughed. If she wants to jump, let her jump at ease. The higher she climbs, the more tragic her fall will be. As for the Doctors' Association, 6th-ranked doctor. Hee, would I pay attention to that? After saying this, Hashi called Gu Lufeng to follow her as they walked into Gu Yolan's room. The only one left behind was Shisan, who was still standing in his original spot. For a while now he had admired his family's young miss, so he felt indignant at the injustice that his young miss was facing. When Hashi first entered Gu Yolan's room, the first thing she saw wasn't Gu Yulan sitting on her bed, but instead she saw a lifeless Gu Yidao who was standing upright beside her bed. Hearing sounds, Gu Yulan turned her head and saw Gu Lufeng entering the room. Happiness quickly flooded her features and a joyful smile appeared. "You've come, Lufeng?" Gu Lufeng immediately quickened his step and rushed over to Gu Yolan's side. He took a nearby pillow and adjusted it behind her so that she could sit more comfortably. "Mother, are you feeling better?" Gu Yulan merely laughed and didn't respond. Soon after, she picked up a nearby red rope and weaved it into a strange design. It could be said that the current Gu Yulan had improved but still hadn't. After passing by this difficult time full of torment, the cold food pill addiction Gu Yulan had disappeared. However, even though she was sober after all was said and done, her mind had still received injuries. She lost practically all of her memories and the only person she recognized was Gu Lufeng. After she lost her memories, she would always take this red rope and weave the same, strange pattern whilst mumbling incoherently under her breath. At times, her face would be full of hurt and concern, but other times, she would have a joyous expression painted on her face. Gu Lufeng gently brought some of her scattered hairs and brought it back behind her ear. His voice was soft as he said, "Perhaps this is the best conclusion. For Mother, if she could forget all the torment and suffering she experienced these past 20 years, she would be the happiest." Although she can't remember anything now and her wisdom is that of a young child's, compared to the past 20 years, her life now is tranquil and mild. But my Jiujio is the most unfortunate. For the sake of my mother and I, he silently endured, fought, and persisted for so long. Yet in the end, he was left with just this one soul. Heshi softly sighed. "I'm sorry, I can't recover the people whose souls had been taken away." In spite of her words, Gu Lufeng laughed. "I haven't even thanked you and you're actually saying sorry to me? Shiyu, do you want me to owe you until my next lifetime? Anyway, isn't Jiujio also happy now? He lost his souls, so he now lacks consciousness and desires. He only recognizes Mother, just like a most loyal guard. defending by mother's side. Perhaps this is what he wanted to most in over 20 years. He nodded her head and confirmed Gu Liufeng's theory. After losing his soul, Gu Yidao was equal to a human body with no wisdom or spirit. He lacked desires and heart. But she didn't expect that after seeing Gu Yulan he would stick so closely by her side. One time, a stray cat had run in front of Gu Yulan. He had nimbly picked it up and set it down before rushing it away. Even though he lost his soul, he still didn't forget what he wanted to do the most, which was to protect her and to ensure that she didn't receive any harm. This attitude made it impossible for He to remain unmoved. Gu Lufeng looked at his mother's peaceful face and quietly said, "Actually, Jiujio isn't my biological Jiujio. I don't even know what his previous surname was, nor do I know why he changed it to Gu. Even more so, I don't know how he and mother came to know each other. All I know is that he's been treating me so well ever since I can remember. So well in fact that I resented the heavens. Why wasn't my biological father Jiujio instead of that brute Murong Feng? But nowadays everything is good." Gu Lufeng stood up and the smile on his face no longer had a hint of melancholy. Instead, it was calm. "All of my hatred and desires have come to the perfect end. The rest of my time will be dedicated to fulfilling my promise to you, to serve you. Shiyu, if there's any need to use any of my territory, please, don't hesitate to ask." He didn't get to respond to his claim when the sound of Dan Dan's crying voice suddenly rang out from outside the room. "Mother, mother, that bad old man stole my freshly steamed meat. Ooh. Mother, you must take responsibility for Dan Dan. Yeah, you little pig, tell me how you don't speak any reason. This dish has clearly been prepared by my clever disciple. What's wrong with me eating a little? And I haven't even talked about you yet. You're so small. How come you eat so much? Where does all the food you eat go? So much delicious food has entered you, a little pig's stomach. Isn't that a waste of resources? Woo woo woo, I dislike this bad old man mother. Dan Dan doesn't want him to be mother's master, doesn't want him to steal Dan Dan's food. Mother, is it okay if you drive him away?" Hearing the big and small voices from nearby and distant places, He felt her temple throbbing at their argument. She expressionlessly looked at Gu Lufeng as she faintly said, "If you can settle those two annoyances for me, I'd even be fine with calling you master." At first, Gu Lufeng blanked, then he burst into rambunctious laughter. "I didn't expect there to be any problem that would leave you, Shiyu, helpless. I thought you were already omnipotent." He blankly stared at him for a moment before lowering her voice to say, "During this period of time, you need to first deal with Good Virtue Hall's matters. Someone also needs to be trained for the matter pertaining Shi Lang and that group of children entering. When Good Virtue Hall's matters are on the right track, hand it over to shopkeeper Zhou. His temperament is mild, which is the best suited for dealing with children. Following this, I have another very important matter for you." He's tone turned serious at this moment and even Gu Lufeng withdrew his smiling expression. Nodding his head, "Shiyu, rest assured. Those children's temperaments are determined and steady. I'm certain that their strength will help you in the future." The children rescued from Murong Manor's dungeon mainly consisted of homeless street urchins. They didn't even know their own surnames. They all mutually went by the same few nicknames of Little Wolf, Naughty Monkey, and Little Stone. After they began following He changed their surnames to Shi, just like she did with Shijia and them. As for their names, they could each think of their own. At a low price, He had someone by Murong Manor, which consisted of the burnt buildings that had turned into haunted houses. She named it Home of Good Virtue, and arranged for those children to learn and train in those houses. The house's nature was analogous to the orphanages in her previous life. After finishing instructing Gu Lufeng, He turned around to leave the room. Once she exited the door, she was welcomed with a little pink pig throwing itself at her. In one motion, she carried it and held it within her bosom. The front of her clothes was instantly soaked with the little fellow's tears. Following his sobs was a magic voice in her head that was tearfully complaining, "Mother, woo woo woo. You must take responsibility of Dan Dan. Dan Dan is suffering even more than the white cabbage in the floor. 1. You even know of white cabbage? How many melodramatic dramas did you see then? On the outside there was the old man who was drinking, whilst letting out satisfying burps, and mischievously laughing. Clever disciple, the wine's almost gone. Aren't you going to replenish some for your master? And that snake soup from this morning was delicious. Ah, master wants to eat more tonight. Hashi felt that she would rather eliminate 100 Murong families and several cloaked persons combined before she would want to deal with these two big and small clowns. It's been a long time since she's had such days. What Hashi didn't expect was that she would unexpectedly receive a transmitting slip 3 days later. This slip was different from the simple and crude one she had in her hand. The slip was silver and there was a dark red design drawn on by a cinnabar. The first thing Hashi thought of was the middle-aged man from 100 Herb Mist who bitterly hated Feng Lian-ing and had lost his wife and child. Hashi channeled her spiritual power into the slip and burned it. Soon after, a male's rough and hoarse voice, carrying anger and resentment, rang out in her ears. As she listened to the man narrating, a cold smile appeared on Hashi's lips and her eyes shone with a deep profoundness which was faintly discernible. She quickly asked for Shi-san to appear in front of her. Dropping her voice, she said, "Shi-san, you need to substitute me to deal with something." "What matter? Don't hesitate to instruct me." Hashi took the silver slip that was a third of the way burnt and softly entered a few words inside. Then she poured spiritual power inside it, allowing it to fly up. After the silver slip flew away, Hashi slowly told Shi-san what task she wanted him to go complete. The days passed as Dan Dan and the old man unnecessarily quarreled through them. Soon, the date approached for the big hunting match that the invitation from Ouyang family mentioned. The only thing that left Hashi gloomy was that when she announced she was to go to the hunting match alone, both Wu Xian and Gu Lufeng firmly opposed her. Wu Xian's tone was heavy and his voice was full of refusal. "Wang Fei, you can't go alone, let this subordinate go with you." Hashi frowned. "Your injury still hasn't healed yet. If you use a large amount of spiritual power, you'll definitely injure your foundation. When that time comes, you'll quite possibly fall from nascent soul stage down to gold core stage and be unable to even near it, nascent soul, again in this lifetime." Wu Xian anxiously retorted, "But this subordinate's responsibility is to follow and protect Wang Fei. How could this subordinate allow Wang Fei to take any chances?" Hashi's entire face was helpless. She looked at Gu Lufeng, whose expression was heavy, then looked at Wu Xian again before sighing. "Aren't you guys too wary? As far as I know, the hunting match is only held every 4 years and the host is Miluo Continent's Sida sect. The purpose of the hunting match is to search for gifted martial artists. After, Sida sect will recruit some. As for the one Sida sect doesn't deem worthy, the imperial and aristocratic families can recruit them. Since they're looking for talent, there's a possibility for injury in the big match. However, it won't be uncalled for and bring harm to someone's life. Let alone for the fact that the big hunting match's competitors can only be at Foundation Establishment stage, Meridian stage, and Gold Core stage. There are also guards at Nascent Soul stage and some are from the Imperial Guards. This can be said to be the safest place and experience." Speaking up to hear, Hashi raised her head. Her phoenix eyes were narrowed, but a burning fire could still be seen in them. "I want to become strong. I don't want to be bullied or suppressed by anyone. So how can I escape danger? Escape competition?" 1. White cabbage in the floor, usually used to represent children who have lost their mother. If I only hide away in safety and cultivate, I'm afraid that any movement would leave my life in danger and myself defenseless. Would I be any different from a caged canary? Is this the life I, Nalan Hashi, wish to lead? Absolutely not. Let alone the fact that I'm not alone. By my side I have Dan Dan, Little Purple, and Long Long. They can help me. Hashi sighed and her tone became decisive. Therefore, if we're friends, don't dare to block me again. Wu Xian and Gu Lufeng turned to look at each other in dismay and were momentarily speechless. Wu Xian wanted to go with her, but his injuries still hadn't completely healed. Gu Lufeng also wanted to go, but he didn't have an invitation, and the big hunting match wasn't just an event anyone could enter. The room quieted down, and for a long time, nobody spoke. Suddenly, loud laughter sounded from outside. "Ayaya, really deserving to be my disciple. You're ambitious and have skill. It seems this master really didn't pick the wrong disciple." Those words had just been spoken when the door opened with a pop, and an old man wearing shabby clothes and reeking of wine appeared in the doorway. He let out a satisfied hiccup and mischievously laughed. "Although your words are pleasant to hear, your strength is far too weak. If you meet someone at Gold Core stage, you can risk your life. But if you run into someone at Nascent Soul stage, that would be far from good. Then, the clever disciple this old man worked so hard to get would be gone. Then wouldn't the fine wine and good food be gone? Very bad, very bad. Too bad." Wu Exan and Gu Lufeng were in the midst of concern when they heard this old man run over and cause trouble. They couldn't help but become fidgety. "Senior, you clearly know He wants to go take risks, yet you aren't thinking of any means to get her to not. How could you only stand here making cynical remarks?" "Who says this old man is only making cynical remarks?" When the old man heard this, he became unhappy and immediately retorted, "Isn't this old man coming to think of a way? I say, clever disciple, can you just not go participate in that pain of a hunting match? If you leave, then won't this master be unable to eat fresh dishes for several months?" He glared at him and coldly stated, "Rest assured, I'll prepare half a year's worth of dishes and fine wine for you. I hope you don't drink yourself to death, master." "Ha! Drinking yourself to death and bursting full of food, isn't that life's best pleasantries? You know your master's intentions far too well." When the old man heard He's words, he wasn't angry, rather he burst into rambunctious laughter. "Since you're so clever, your master must also fulfill his obligations." After saying this, the old man disappeared from his spot and brought He along with him. Wu Exan and Gu Lufeng both turned pale with fright from this stunt. They went to follow them, but found that they couldn't even sense the breaths of either of them. Soon after, they heard the old man's loud laughter ring out from a distant place. "You two babies, rest assured. I'm only teaching my clever disciple some defensive skills. This will guarantee that she'll return from the big hunting match safe and sound." 10 days had already passed since that old beggar man had brought He away, and the big hunting match was just 3 days away from starting. Alone, Gu Lufeng sat at the base of Tsung Mountain in B courtyard. He blankly stared off into the distance with wrinkled brows whilst drinking. Suddenly, he felt a frosty wind blowing from behind his back, causing him to shiver from the cold. By the time he reacted and lifted his head to look at the doorway, he couldn't help but let out a cry of surprise. You? You're back?" After uttering these words, Gu Lufeng actually looked frightened. He looked at the sorry figure of Shiyu in front of him and inevitably felt like he was staring at a dangerous animal. That's right now Shiyu was truly a sorry figure. All her clothes were tattered and torn, and even the top of her head was coated in dust. Her originally satin-like hair now resembled a bird's nest. And her face was somewhat unsightly. Her eyes were deep-set and she looked tired. Her phoenix eyes seemed to hold a colder light than what she had 10 days prior. Gu Lufeng strode forward and worriedly welcomed her back. "Shiyu, you're fine, right? Where have you been? Your master instructed you to practice. Don't mention that inhumane old man to me." He spit each word out, one by one, and the cold air surrounding her seemed to grow more gloomy the moment her master was mentioned. Gu Lufeng lowered his voice and couldn't help but softly ask, "What did he do?" What did he do?" He bit her teeth and chillingly said, "He threw me in the middle of a sword fight, inside. Inside is entirely filled with swords emanating the chi of Gold Core and Nascent Soul stage martial artists. Then, he told me that I was to go inside and train. He said that after one day, he would take me out and I was to work on making sure my spiritual power wasn't depleted and that I wasn't hit by any swords during that time. In the end, 1 day passed, then 2. And finally 10, and that old man still hadn't appeared. I was stuck in the sword fight for 10 days and nights. I went without food and sleep. I was forced to constantly block the sword's attacks. Not only that, the longer I stayed there, the more those swords tore up the mountains and rocks. Every day, dust and sand flew around. I couldn't even open my eyes, and every breath I took filled my lungs with dust and sand. Just a little bit more and I would have suffocated to death. Speaking up to here, Heshi's face twisted and a raging flame appeared in her eyes as she swore, "Smelly old man, just you wait. The next time I get my hands on you, I'll give all the fine wine and delicious food to the pig, right in front of your face. I'll let you see but not taste, smell but not drink, just you wait." Gu Lufeng lowly coughed twice and covered his mouth to stifle his laughter. Hi. Shi, I do feel like, even though you haven't advanced in rank, your power and killing spirit has greatly increased. How did you escape from the sword fight? One had to know that the swords never stopped swinging. Even if Heshi wanted to get some food from her space, she was completely unable to find the opportunity. If she loosened for even a second, she could have been chopped in half. The torture and hardship from these 10 days were obvious. Heshi played down her situation, but shock still appeared in Gu Liufeng's expression. However, his shock quickly disappeared. No wonder I've always felt that your cultivation wasn't lower than mine. It appears that you can already fight against nascent soul and gold core stage martial artists. Little Yue, are you certain that you could win against someone at gold core stage now? Heshi frowned then nodded her head. If they're at high-level gold core stage or below, I'm confident that I'll be able to best them. If they're at the summit of gold core stage, it's no question that I'd at least escape in one piece. How did I get out? Heshi unhappily answered. Obviously I fought against hundreds of swords before rushing out of the sword fight. Don't tell me you thought that I would allow myself to be trapped in there and die of thirst or starvation. Her self-disciple wasn't only from training for 10 days in the sword fight, it was also due to what happened after her elder Jiang. Once again, she had a taste of her Maha inheritance. Even though her cultivation hadn't raised by much, her cultivation and actual fighting skills were much stronger than before. Gu Lufeng released a breath and said, "Now, if you go to the hunting competition and there aren't any major mishaps, nobody will be able to threaten you. You guys were the one with groundless fears in the first place." Heshi softly smiled and retorted, "I'll go inside to wash up first. This afternoon, I plan to set out to Breaking Spirit Mountain." Breaking Spirit Mountain, as the name implied, was a place that ordinary people couldn't enter and return from. Breaking Spirit Mountain is a mountain range that stretches thousands of kilometers from south to north. Running across all 3 countries, it was a mountain range far more vast than Song Mountain. Breaking Spirit Mountain's highest point was located in the middle of Jinling country. There, thick fog swirled around the mountain all year, and there were countless magic beasts that called the mountain home. The ranks of the magic beasts there were quite high. It could be said to be second only to those in the magic beast forest. Moreover, most of the magic beasts in Breaking Spirit Mountain had lost all rationality. They were completely savage. The magic beasts were cunning and treacherous in a completely different way than the ones in the magic beast forest. The magic beasts residing here were even able to take the shape of a human, so normally, few people would willingly step onto the mountain. However, because of how savage the magical beasts were, they would even occasionally come off the mountain to harm people. Therefore, the elders from the 4 biggest influential families and the largest sects created a large array to prevent the magical beasts from coming down and prevent others from entering. Afterwards, the 4 biggest sects suddenly opened up a relatively safe location at the top of the mountain one year. Inside, there were numerous magical beasts at 6th rank and lower which could be hunted, and any other magical beasts weren't drawn to the location. Every 4 years, a hunting competition would take place and everyone participating would be sent to this location via a teleportation array. Once they arrived, they would all kill the magical beasts. Every time they killed a magical beast, they would need to obtain an internal pill. This way they would earn points. Whomever ended up with the most points would be declared the champion of that year's competition. The more they held this competition, the more Miluo continent buzzed about it, so naturally, there were more and more martial artists competing each year. This was because, not only would you obtain good achievements during the big hunting competition, you would also earn many of the large sects' interest. As for the elite disciples of the large sects, if they were able to perform exceptionally well, they would be able to receive great honor within the sect, earning them much more rewards and resources. Jinling country is actually a very small country, so for the hunting competition to be held here was merely based on the geographical location of Breaking Spirit Mountain. Therefore, regardless of whether it was a sect or the imperial family handling the event, they would each treat it as a major event. And the people of Jinling country who were able to receive an invitation were very few and far between. After saying this, He began walking inside the room. But who knew that Wu Xian's figure would suddenly flash and come forth? Without waiting for He to say anything, he stuffed the things in his hands toward He's and in a lowered voice, he said, "Wang Fei, while you're participating in the hunting competition, please wear this. During a crucial point, perhaps it can help you pass it." While saying these words, Wu Xian's face seemed unsightly. He seemed to be full of discontentment and restlessness. But soon, his expression changed into sincerity as he asked He this. He held the jade slip in her hand and inspected it. No matter how she looked at it, all she saw was an ordinary jade slip that was light green in color and held no peculiar points. She then raised her head and looked at Wu Xian with a beseeching expression. She couldn't help but sigh before saying, "Okay, I'll accept it." 3 days later, He arrived at Jinling's imperial family's temporary residence at Breaking Soul Mountain. The residence was enormous and decorated splendidly, presenting a dazzling sight to all who beheld it, that is, except for martial artists. To martial artists, all this couldn't meet the eyes of an immortal cultivator. Just having arrived, He was just about to pull out her invitation card, but she was interrupted by the sound of a woman's surprised voice. Gongzi. Surprised, He turned around and came face to face with an elegant and beautiful young lady. The young lady's appearance seemed familiar, but no matter how long He pondered over it, she couldn't recall where she had seen her. "Gongzi, it's really you?" The young girl's face was filled with satisfaction and she lightly ran over, thanking Gongzi for saving my life last time. Has Gongzi fared well after leaving Sealed Dragon Domain's secret territory? Saved her life. Sealed Dragon Domain's secret territory? Once the young girl's words were out, He immediately remembered her. Xinqingchua? He had always possessed the ability to remember everyone she met, but at the time, the young girl was such a sorry figure, a complete contrast to her now, as she was wearing magnificent clothes, so the He didn't immediately connect the two. Shen Qingchua was extremely surprised. Each time she spoke, her voice quivered. "Gongzi, I never thought you would actually remember me. I engraved the memory of Gongzi saving me. I haven't forgotten it since." The young lady's face was bright red and her voice was quivering and quiet, like that of a tiny fly. Her entire person looked like a flower that had been touched by dew. She emitted a shy aura and her eyes were sincere and clear. In response, He's tone unconsciously softened by several degrees when she saw her. "It was merely a slight effort, young lady Shen, there's no need to be so troubled." Shen Qingchua immediately wanted to refute those words. That wasn't a mere effort, it was a life-saving grace that she had etched into her memory. But before she could even speak, a male's soft voice sounded out from behind her back. "Chur, is this your new friend?" When Shen Qingchua heard that voice, she immediately turned around and affectionately called out, "Xiao Shu Wen, this is the person I spoke to you about, the Gongzi who saved me in Sealed Dragon Domain. If it weren't for her, Chur would have long died in that mist and I wouldn't be able to see Xiao Shu and Ye anymore." He raised her head to size up the newcomer. All she saw was a man that looked to be about 27 or 8 years old. He looked to be cultured and refined, but when she sensed that his cultivation had, terrifyingly, already reached the middle of nascent soul stage. And standing behind him were a couple disciples, each of whom were wearing cyan-colored clothes. Most of these disciples were already at a high level of gold core and meridian stage. When the man heard Shen Qingchua's words, he reached a shaking hand out and rested it atop her head. With unhappiness coating his voice, he said, "You still have the nerve to speak of that. That day, we urged you not to go, We told you that sealed dragon domain's border was extremely dangerous and didn't want you to follow your senior male and female students there. But you? Not only do you not listen, you actually even colluded with younger students to run away from the group and sneakily run to the secret territory. Fortunately, there was someone to save you. Otherwise, if your Ye came to know that your body was in Jinling country, he would have wreaked havoc on Jinling country. If you continue to disobey us, we'll lock you up on Qingxia Mountain for 100 years. You'll have to cultivate every day and you won't be able to come down. When Shun Qingchua heard his threat, her face immediately showed suffering and she grabbed onto his sleeve and looked up at him with pleading eyes. Xiao Shu Shu, I already know my wrongs, don't scold me, okay? Especially not. In front of Gongzi's face, can't you leave me some face? 1. Xiao Shu, her paternal uncle. 2. Ye, paternal grandfather. The man cast a glance at Shun Qingchua before looking away and slowly walking forward before stopping in front of Heshi. He extended his hand out and introduced himself. I am Qingxia Section Senator. Many thanks to you for saving Chuar's life in sealed dragon domain. I still haven't asked, what is Gongzi's name? Heshi calmly extended her hand out and grasped his. I am Shiyu. After seeing him, Shunsen was immediately filled with more respect for this youngster. Not only was he respectful because he saved Shun Qingchua's life, but he saw that he was a mere foundation establishment stage, yet when he faced him, he emitted a pressure that was neither servile nor overbearing, and it was completely calm. Moreover, Qingxia sect was one of the 4 largest sects in Miluo continent and Chuar's identity within the sect was special. However, he showed no signs of wanting to curry favor. When Shun Qingchua heard Heshi introduce herself, she mulled over the 2 characters, Shiyu, for a few moments. She sneaked a glance at the youth in front of her. He was quiet, elegant, and outstanding. He was clear and bright, similar to the moonlight, and he surpassed the sky and mountain snow. This type of person hadn't appeared before, even in Shun Qingchua's fantasies. Moreover, he was so brave and powerful, he had saved her from her nightmare in hell. When Shun Qingchua thought of this, her face turned a shade redder and she lowered her gaze, not daring to look at Heshi any longer. She tugged at Shinsen's sleeve and lowered her head, and occasionally, she glanced up at Heshi. Her voice was that of a mosquito's as she said, Has Shi Gongzi come to participate in the hunting competition? That's right. My fellow students and I have also come to participate. Shun Qingchua's voice was filled with expectations as she suggested, it would be better if we went together to the sign-up place. If the number we pull out are close, perhaps we'll be set to nearby positions. To enter the Breaking Spirit Mountain, you had to go into the teleporting array in the order that you drew your number. However, where you teleported was completely random. Therefore, there wasn't anything such as being sent to closer positions just because the numbers they drew were close. Shen-Sin lowly coughed and held back his smile, but he didn't go to expose his family's niece's thoughts. Shigongzi, if you haven't come with a sect, it would be better if you go with us to the meeting place, wouldn't it? Heshi didn't hesitate to nod her head. Rather than going alone, it would be better if she went with Qingxia sect, which would save her many inconveniences along the way. So, together, the few people avoided the crowds and walked to the nearby residence. Although the road there wasn't long, it still allowed Shinsen's impression of this youth named Shiyu to become better and better. He was elegant, his voice was pleasant, and when he spoke, his words were neither servile nor overbearing. There wasn't the slightest hint of a loose, low-level cultivator who felt inferior or bitter. Moreover, Shun-Sun had originally planned to talk to him about cultivation and kindly point some things out to him. However, who could have known that Shiyu's knowledge of cultivation, dantians, and meridians would even be beneficial to him? As for the disciples following behind Shinsen, they were currently swarming Shiyu and incessantly asking questions, completely forgetting that Shiyu was a low-level foundation establishment stage cultivator. Shigongzi, why do my knees feel slightly sluggish whenever I practice the basics of my water attribute? Not only that, the higher my cultivation becomes, the more that sluggish feeling in my knee turns to pain. Heshi cast a glance at the young disciple. She observed his color and also used her spiritual power to look over his knee, before she slowly said, "Your constitution leans more toward yin and coldness, and the water attribute is classified as negative, so once you practice it, your yin and cold air will become congested in your joints. When you're younger, it won't be clear, but when you're older or perhaps when your water attribute is promoted, you may find it hard to even walk." Anxious, the disciple immediately asked, "Shigongzi, are there any ways to help me?" "That is very easy." Hashi faintly smiled. "All you have to do is gather cassia twig, acaranthes root, earthworm, chinai, rhizoma atractylidus, and immortal spirit. Then, boil all of these ingredients until it becomes medicinal juice. It's best if you have someone who's an expert in the fire attribute to come do this for you. Then, each time you practice your water attribute, spread it onto the afflicted areas. After a long time, the dampness in your joints will be removed and you won't feel pain anymore." When the disciple heard her orders, he felt overjoyed and repeatedly thanked Hashi. Hashi's response caused the rest of Qing Xiasek's disciples to be unable to wait anymore. At once, they all started asking her questions. "Shigongzi, after my daily meditation, my chest always hurts and I feel nauseous. Do you know why this could be happening?" "Shigongzi, I have an old father who's now 53. A few years prior, his body was well, but these past 2 years, he frequently feels dizzy and sleepy. Do you know why this, Shigongzi?" "Shigongzi." Shinsen looked at the group of youngsters surrounding Hishi and intimately calling out her name and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. However, what left him the most amazed at was that these disciples' questions were of all sorts of problems, and each one was odd and suspicious. Even their Qing Xiasek's fourth-ranked doctors weren't able to cure them. However, this youth in front of him, which looked nothing more than 16 or 17 years old, was able to answer each one that came her way. The youth's voice was mild and elegant, and he spoke clearly. His black and white eyes were clear and calm, causing people to inexplicably want to trust him. He was such a remarkable man, no wonder Chuar would be so captivated and think of him so much. Although his cultivation was still quite low, he was still young. And if they were going to compare minds, his beat Chuar's many times over. If you think about it a little, it'll one day shine. Shensen cast a glance at his niece and saw that her eyes were glued onto Shigongzi's figure. Her expression contained shyness and cowardice. When he saw this, he couldn't help but tease. "I say, Chuar, isn't this the sweetheart you missed and longed for over these few months and days? Now that you've finally met again, why aren't you going up and speaking to him?" Shin Qingchua shyly buried her face in her hands and mumbled, "Xiao Shu Shu, how could you say such nonsense? What sweetheart? If Shigongzi hears of this, I'll lose so much face." Shensen burst out in laughter. By now, the group had already reached their destination. Shensen and the rest of them handed over their invitation to the guard, who immediately turned respectful upon seeing it. Soon after, he nodded his head and another guard appeared. His head was bent and he led them to their seats of honor. Hashi was the last one to hand over her invitation card. The guard in charge of checking over the invitations was originally carelessly doing so, but his expression soon turned grave. He held her invitation in his hand and refused to hand it back to Hashi. "Is there a problem with my invitation?" The guard looked at Hashi, then turned to look at Shinsen and everyone else waiting for her, and hesitation appeared on his face. His eyes immediately turned back to her and he laughed. "Gongzi's invitation card has a problem. I need someone to come verify it for me. Asking Gongzi to please wait a moment." After saying this, the guard secretly motioned to his companions before quickly exiting. Those guards' manners looked unconscious, but they quickly formed a semicircle around her, stopping her from exiting the lobby. A few moments later, that guard came back, but this time, he had 7 or 8 martial artists following behind him. Each of the martial artists were at gold core stage. The person heading the martial artists had a bearded face, making it hard to tell his age. However, his cultivation had already reached the summit of gold core stage. His tiger eyes carried a trace of chilliness as he directly stared at Hashi. His voice was quiet as he asked, "You're Shiyu?" "That's right." That martial artist immediately waved his hand and sternly ordered, "Capture her for me." Right after he said this, those martial artists behind him charged forward and surrounded Heshi. And at some unknown guards, some of the temporary residence's guards had come and formed another vague circle around the 7 or 8 martial artists. Heshi frowned and asked, "I got my invitation from Ouyang Jiangjun and came to participate in the hunting competition. May I please ask what's the meaning of all this?" That martial artist scoffed and lowly said, "Brazen traitor, you committed such a grave crime, and you actually dare to run here. You walked right into a trap. I see that you're impatient to live." After saying this, he faced the shocked martial artists standing nearby and cupped his hands together. With a clear voice, he announced, "Jin Ling's emperor's personal guard, Luo Yingqi, has provided a secret imperial decree to capture the culprit who murdered the third prince Shangguan Rui. Shi Yu, your crime of murdering the third prince Shangguan Rui in the sealed dragon domain's secret territory has already been publicly announced. Do you have anything else to say?" The light in Hishi's eyes faintly turned cold and chilliness slipped across her eyes, but she didn't lose her head. "You guys say that I murdered third prince Shangguan Rui, but do you have evidence?" If she didn't remember incorrectly, Shangguan Rui should be the first pitiful victim of Feng Lianying's 5 elements blood coagulating pill. Yet, how come the crime of killing Shangguan Rui has now been put onto her head? It seems like her coming to participate in the hunting competition had already been calculated by her opponent. Hee Feng Lianing, you're sinister enough. You stealing my achievements, I won't speak of, but you actually dare to put your crime of killing someone onto my head. The bearded martial artist coldly snorted. The emperor's secret imperial decree is proof. Come people, quickly seize him for me. Seeing that Heshi had been surrounded by the 7 or 8 gold core stage martial artists and that she was already in the position of an easy target, Shen Qingchua felt extremely worried. Shen Qingchua anxiously said, "Xiao Shu Shu, how can they trap Shiyu and kill him? We should quickly go and help Shiyu." Shen Sin knit his brows and answered, "This is Jin Ling country's affair. We're visitors. If we recklessly get involved, bad things can happen. It would be better if we lay low and watch the situation before thinking of ways to help Shigongzi escape. If we lay low and watch, Shigongzi will be hurt by them." Shen Qingchua was on the verge of tears. "Xiao Shu Shu, if you have a heart of stone and don't wish to help, it's fine. I'll go help Shigongzi myself." After she said this, she ignored the crowd and recklessly charged over. Shen Sin helplessly watched on. He saw as Shen Qingchua neared the martial artists and was just about to start opposing them. He was left with no other alternative but to step forward and use his spiritual pressure to heavily say, "What's going on?" The several gold core stage martial artists were reduced to trembles by Shen Sen's voice that carried spiritual pressure. The surrounding guards were even more unable to stand it and they recoiled a few steps back. When the bearded martial artist saw Shen Sen, his originally arrogant expression turned respectful and flattering. "Elder Shin, this subordinate didn't notice you here. This subordinate has alarmed you. I'm truly sorry." Shen Sen's expression remained indifferent and his tone remained light as he slowly said, "This Shiyu is related to our Qingxia sect and even arrived with us. Why would he been stopped here by guards? He's saying it respectfully." Luo Yingqi was both the emperor's personal guard and the commanding officer of the imperial guards. But when he faced Shen Sen, Luo Yingqi didn't dare to act big. His voice carried great respect as he replying to Elder Shin, "It isn't us who's deliberately causing trouble for Shigongzi. Rather, it's because Shigongzi is suspected of killing the third prince, so the emperor has ordered this subordinate to go apprehend her." Shen Sen narrowed his eyes. "What proof do you have that says Shigongzi killed the third prince?" "The proof is in the emperor's hands. This subordinate isn't clear on it. However, as far as this subordinate knows, this Shiyu has had issues with the third prince previously and ever since then, they've harbored hard feelings for each other. Perhaps it's because of this reason that she killed our third prince in the sealed dragon domain in order to vent her hatred." Before Shen Sen could respond, Shen Qingchua already yelled, her voice full of anger, "Impossible! Shigongzi isn't that type of person. Moreover, your Jinling is too unreasonable if it places a crime on someone purely based off of guesswork." Shen Sin held on to the emotional Shen Qingchua, stopping her from talking, and unhurriedly laughed. Since there's no evidence, what reason do you have to see someone? Wouldn't it be better if the leader went to get the evidence before arresting the person? Shiyu, let's leave. When Luo Yingqi saw that Shinsen was just about to walk away with the person, he urgently said, Elder Shin, that's not possible. We're acting under imperial orders, we cannot allow for Shiyu to be taken away. Why would Shinsen pay attention to him? He held on to Shiyu was just about to leave. Qingxia sect was one of the 4 largest sects on Miluo continent. They didn't even pay attention to Tiangang country's monarch, so why would they pay any mind to Jinling, this insignificant country? But before Shinsen could step out, a man's gloomy voice rang out from behind him. Shinsen, you're a grand elder of Qingxia sect. Could it be that you want to ignore what's right and shield an assassin? Shinsen turned around, and when he saw the person behind him, his pupils slightly contracted. Feng Yunjing. Luli sect was in Songming country and Qingxia sect was in Tiangang country. The 2 sects both minded their own business. However, regarding the matter with the ruler of Feng family and the person who truly wielded power in Lulu sect, Shinsen was very clear on it. At a young age he was already at nascent soul stage. Moreover, his personality was fiery and firm, and he had innumerable amounts of magic weapons on his hands. To provoke him and the Feng family would be like provoking a viper. It would be difficult to back out once you've done so. Behind Feng Yunjing was an exquisite, immortal-like woman wearing a white cotton skirt and a handsome youth. It was Feng Lianying and Ye Jinshan. Shensen frowned and said, Young Master Feng, what is the meaning of this? However, Feng Yunjing's burning gaze was currently resting on Heshi. His gaze was so intense that it made it hard for others to ignore it, even if they wished to. After not seeing her for a few months, he found that the girl had grown into an even more beautiful and moving person. Even though she was dressed in men's clothes and wore no jewelry, it was still impossible to hide her lovely features. Her skin was snow white, like porcelain, and there were no blemishes to be seen on it. Her phoenix eyes were colorful and clear, but in them there was a cold gleam. Even though she was in these circumstances, her eyes still held a calm and unflustered light. It felt as if she didn't feel a hint of fear or confusion. Feng Yunjing pursued his lips as he unconsciously entered a fantasy. That face appeared by his side and held a weeping and begging expression. When he thought about this celestial snow-like, lofty, and proud person being ruined under him, with misty eyes and calling out his name, his eyes ignited with a burning fire. He suddenly clenched the hand laying limply by his side. He deeply sucked in a breath, forcibly trying to suppress the oncoming heat wave. But there was no need to hurry. Soon this person would become his own. Fen Yunjing's eyes swiveled over to Shinsen as he faintly laughed. The evidence clearly shows that Shiyu killed the 3rd prince Shangguanrui. Isn't Elder Shin worried that the reputation of Qingxia sect will be affected if you continue to shield him and obstruct the Imperial Guard? You're telling lies. Before Shinsen could respond, Shin Qingchua angrily yelled out, Where's the proof? Just then we asked that Imperial Guard to bring out proof. How come he can't take it out? Moreover, even if you have proof, I'm certain that you framed Shiyu. Chwer, don't be rude. In one motion, Shinsen pulled his niece back. Feng Lianying, who was standing behind Feng Yunjing, cast a loathing glare in Heshi's direction before turning her head to face Shin Qingchua with a soft smile painted on her face. Chwer Mimi, you can know someone for a long time without knowing their true nature. You must not allow yourself to be tricked by this Shiyu's outward appearance. She stepped forward 2 steps. Her body moved like she was moving clouds and flowing water, giving off the appearance of an immortal. On her face, she wore a mild and affable smile that caused people to easily form a favorable impression upon first look. Standing in front of Shin Qingchua, Feng Lianying let out a sigh and said, Chwer Mimi, you're the pearl in the palm of your grandfather's hand, so you haven't yet seen the ugly side of this world. Therefore, you don't know that this world has numerous repulsive people who are beasts hiding behind a human face. When I first met this Shiyu, I was also tricked by his outward appearance. I too thought that he was a modest gongzi. However, later on I learned that he I learned that his heart was actually so shameless and ruthless. He actually tried to seduce my fiancée and repeatedly framed me. Chor Mimi, you're still young so you're gullible. But by the time you've been tricked by him, it'll already be too late. This is something Jiejian, definitely doesn't wish to see happen to you. Feng Lian Ying's words were reasonable and deeply sentimental. One after another, the martial artists circling around Heshi all turned to look at her in disgust as they fell for Feng Lian Ying's words. Someone couldn't help but mutter on their breath, I was just saying how this man has such evildoer looks. As it turns out he's like a cunning fox, even going as far as to try and seduce other people's fiancés. He really is too shameless. Who is the fiancé that he seduced? You don't know this? Naturally it's His Majesty the King of Hell. You don't know, but before, there were rumors spread in Yanjing country that the King of Hell was behaving intimately with a man on the streets. Everyone thought that the King of Hell had a cut sleeve. So it's actually His Majesty the King of Hell. If he's shameless, then we won't talk about it, but he actually dares to drag the King of Hell down with him. He's truly too vile. No wonder that even the Ice Lotus Fairy, who has such a good temper, would look down at him with so much loathing. When Feng Lianying heard everyone around her discussing, she felt immensely proud of herself. Turning around to look at Shen Qingchua again, the smile on her face became even kinder. Chen or Mimi, my words now aren't for selfish reasons, I just hope that you won't be cheated by this person, I won't be cheated by others and Shi Gongzi won't trick me. Shen Qingchua snapped and couldn't help but loudly yell out, I remember you, Ice Lotus Fairy, Feng Liani. You're the shameless one, what qualifications do you have to speak of Shi Gongzi? Feng Lianying's face was painted with shock, but Shen Qingchua didn't stop there. I also entered into the sealed dragon domain's secret territory. Don't think that I don't know you exited the sealed dragon domain's secret territory with no clothes on your body. I saw all of it. You're the one who doesn't want to save face. You provoked His Majesty the King of Hell and now he doesn't even want you. You also actually want to frame Shi Gongzi. You're the one who's truly shameless here. One, Jie, an older sister, but in this case, Feng Lianying is calling herself Jie and Shen Qingchua Mimi in order to make it appear that they're close/are friendly. 2 cut sleeve, a euphemism for being homosexual. Chapter 504 Meddling in Others' Affairs. Once those words were said, Feng Lianying's face switched from green to white in a flash. The martial artists crowding around them let out a roar of laughter when they heard what was revealed. Naturally these martial artists had heard of what happened, but none of them took it seriously, thinking it was someone else who made up a story to frame the Ice Lotus Fairy. But, now that they heard it directly from Shen Qingchua's mouth, they now believed the rumors 70 to 80%. Only because Shen Qingchua's face and voice still held the same innocent and shy charm of a child's. To everyone, it felt like Shen Qingchua would never speak lies just to slander someone. Elder Shen, are you allowing your niece to be a troublemaker in order to stall for time and protect Shiyu, that murderer? A deep voice sounded out, instantly suppressing everyone else's voices in the hall. When everyone heard Feng Yunjing coldly say those words, they immediately quieted down out of fear. Shen Sen sneered and didn't make any motions to back down. Young Master Feng keeps repeating how Shiyu is a murderer, but I've yet to see any evidence be taken out. I still say that you're framing someone. After saying so, Shen Sen turned his attention toward Heshi and asked, Shiyu, did you kill the third prince? Heshi unhesitatingly answered, no. Shen Sen peered deeper into her eyes and only saw that they were clear, but he did notice a flash of cold light flashing through them. She openly welcomed his gaze and didn't show any motions to shrink back or dodge it. Shen Sen soon let out a faint smile and clearly said, I trust you. Since you didn't do anything, I definitely won't allow others to brazenly accuse you. Once Shen Sen's words were heard, Feng Yunjing's face became incomparably gloomy. His expression toward Heshi grew even more grave. He didn't know how much charm this person had. First, it was in sealed dragon domain where she had Nangong Yu and Gu Lufeng protecting her. Nowadays, at Breaking Spirit Mountain, She had Qing Xiasek's Shen family's people protecting her. He cast a cold glance at Shen Sen and gloomily said, "When did Shen family's people begin meddling in other people's businesses? We're in Jinling country. Furthermore, it was Jinling country's third prince who died. Qing Xiasek doing so is really exceeding their bounds. Are you not afraid of being laughed at by everyone else?" So young Master Feng also knows it's Jinling country's matter. Shen Sen sarcastically shot back, refusing to yield even an inch. Since it was someone from Jinling country who died, what relation does it have to Feng family? Young Master Feng is being so overbearing to a foundation establishment youngster. It makes me wonder whether or not Feng family harbors bad intentions. The expression on Feng Yunjing's face darkened. H was stuck in a difficult situation. Shen family's power was equal to Feng family's. Feng family and Feng Yunjing were unwilling for the two families to fall out just for an insignificant Shiyu. He just didn't understand why the Grand Shen family would actually go head-to-head with Feng family for a single low-level, foundation establishment stage martial artist. At this moment, Feng Lianying couldn't hold herself back anymore. Facing Heshi, she began to sternly reprimand her. "Shiyu, you're still acting so shameless? Clearly it's a sin you committed yourself. Yet you actually have the face to allow Shen family's people and Chor Mimi to rush forward for you? If you still have some conscience, quickly admit to your wrongdoings. If not, when the evidence comes out and everyone knows you're a murderer, you'll greatly affect Qing Xiasek's reputation. Don't tell me you actually want this outcome?" Heshi, who had been silent all along, finally raised her head when she heard Feng Lianying's words. Facing her, she offered a smile that wasn't a smile and said, "Oh? Who was it exactly who killed Shangguan Rui? I believe that Ice Lotus Fairy and young Master Feng are the two most familiar with that, no?" Without waiting for the Ice Lotus Fairy to refute, Heshi's voice turned cold and she slowly said, "Feng Lianying, didn't you say you had evidence in your hands? Please take out your evidence for everyone to see since you're so sure that I killed Shangguan Rui. I'm also curious. How exactly did I kill the third prince? You think I don't dare?" Feng Lianying shrieked, "Just wait until I bring the evidence out for everyone to see. That way, everyone can see your true colors. Since it's like this." Shensen suddenly interrupted Feng Lianying and heavily said, "Wouldn't it be better if we let Shangguan Wenji, Jinling's emperor, come and conduct a public trial? What does Feng Lianying think?" Feng Yunjing's eyes turned gloomy. He turned to Heshi and slowly said, "Shiyu, you need to clearly think this through. If the public trial finds you guilty, you'll forever carry the crime of being a murderer. It would be impossible to have the status of a doctor on Miluo continent after that. If you obediently admit your crime now, perhaps I can plead leniency on your behalf and let you leave Jinling country and practice medicine and saving others elsewhere. It was common for martial artists to kill others, but as a doctor, if you gain the reputation of killing others with your medicine, then you would be spurned by most martial artists." Heshi sneered, "I don't need young Master Feng's fake kindness. I'm genuinely curious, how are you guys going to press such a crime on my head? This is something your Feng family is the best at, I don't know how. Fortunately, I can master it today." When Feng Yunjing heard her, his face instantly darkened and the little bit of tenderness left in his eyes instantly vanished and was replaced by coldness. He then coldly scoffed, "Since you want to court death, don't blame us." After warning her, he turned toward Shen Sen and faintly suggested, "Since it's going to be a public trial, how can just having Shen family and our Feng family be enough? We should call upon people of Qixing Palace, Moonwater sect's elders, and the representatives of other large sects here at the hunting competition. Everyone should come over and see the results." Seeing the steadiness and determination to win in Feng Yunjing's eyes, Shensen slightly frowned. Could it be that Feng family really had evidence on hand? If it was truly so, then if Shiyu was convicted in a public trial in front of the four big families, Shiyu would truly be unable to free himself and Shen family would also be implicated. Shensen didn't have time to respond before Shun Qingchua loudly said, "If it's a public trial, then so be it." There isn't a shadow of fear in Shigongzi's body. As long as he hasn't done it, Our Shen family will support Shigongzi to the end. Shinsen immediately felt a headache coming on, but all he could do was helplessly allow the trial to continue. The hunting competition was taking place in the afternoon, and right now, it was SI sure, between 9 to 11 a.m. Adding on to that fact was that all the martial artists partaking in the competition had already signed up. So, there was more than enough time to conduct a public trial. In the temporary imperial residence's large hall, there were countless high-level martial artists sitting on either side. Jin Ling's emperor, Shangguan Wenji, was currently sitting in the dragon throne. But at this moment, his forehead was dotted with cold sweat and he was nervously shifted on the chair. He was definitely Jin Ling's emperor. In front of ordinary people, he was able to command the impressive aura that an emperor should have. But Miluo continent's martial arts world had more strength than he did. In front of the aristocratic families and large sects, he was unable to find even the courage to speak a few words. Especially the fact that he was currently sitting in front of the biggest and most famous 4 sects of the martial arts world. On either side, there was the elders of those 4 sects sitting there. Each of the elders were at nascent soul stage. The first elder sitting to his left was Qing Xia sect's Shun Sen, and the first elder sitting to his right was Lu Lu sect's Feng Yunjing. The person sitting in the second seat on the left was Qixing Palace's Elder Xia. The person sitting on the second seat on the right was Watermoon sect's Elder Han. Behind these 4 nascent soul stage martial artists, there were also each sect's respective younger generations. Most of these people were at Gold Core stage, with a handful of them even being at Meridian stage. And behind the sects were several representatives of small sects and families of different countries. Most of these people were at the summit of Gold Core stage. Naturally, apart from the sects and families, there were also other scattered martial artists who had high enough cultivation levels to be invited. In Jinling country, apart from the Hell King, His Highness Nangongyu, the person with the highest cultivation was merely at the summit of Gold Core stage. There wasn't even any martial artists at nascent soul stage. So, when Shangguan Wenji faced this group of people, he felt like he was sitting on pins and needles. But when he met Feng Yunjing's gaze, he steeled himself and faced Heshi, who was standing beneath him. Raising his voice, he questioned, "Brazen Shiyu, someone has accused you of killing my prince in sealed dragon domain. Do you recognize the claim?" Heshi's reply was concise and consisted of only 2 characters, "I don't recognize it." Shangguan Wenji had originally expected to hear this youth defend himself for a long time. Yet who would have known that he waited such a long time for just 2 characters? Furthermore, the one accused didn't even seem to have the slightest indication to want to expand on their statement. He suddenly choked and couldn't get any words out for a long time. Hi. Shiyu, the evidence that you killed someone is already certain. Today, even if you don't recognize it, you can't escape punishment. Heshi faintly smiled, her expression like a mild cloud and light wind. Since you say so, please take the evidence out. Don't blindly argue just because someone else said something. That's enough. Shangguan Wenji had been angered by Heshi to the point that his face flashed between purple and red. He was so caught up in his anger that he even forgot his fear toward Shen family. He waved his hand and ordered, "I'll let you die to understand. Someone come and have Zhen Yu Gongzhu and the guards called over." Soon, a beautiful figure dressed in flowery clothes appeared. It was Zhen Yu Gongzhu. Her cultivation was quite low, but right now, she was exactly in the prime of her youth. Her body was maturing into a seductive and well-developed woman. At this moment, she walked over with tears streaming down her cheeks. Her red eyes and nose were exposed for everyone to see, evoking feelings of pity from the crowd. Following behind her were a couple of unremarkable guards, most of whom were only at foundation establishment stage. Zhen Yu Gongzhu walked up to Shangguan Wenji and performed a proper ceremony before turning to Heshi. Abruptly, she angrily cried out, "How could you be so malicious, Shiyu? My 3rd brother only had a few minor disputes with you. How could you actually murder him in sealed dragon domain? How pitiful of my 3rd brother. His behavior was always so kind-hearted and modest, yet he actually died in such a way. Woo woo woo. When Shangguan Wenji was reminded of how his son died, bitterness also flashed across his face. He fiercely cast a glare at Heshi before saying to Zhenyu Gongzhu, "You're saying that Shiyu already had conflict with Rare? Zhenyu, you need not hide anything. Completely tell us everything that happened that day." With a weeping voice, Zhenyu Gongzhu slowly said, "That day, we originally wanted to go to Mingwang Manor to call on Yugij. Who would have imagined we would actually come across Shiyu at his doorway? At the time, we didn't know who he was. But, even though he was merely at Qi refining stage, his manner was so arrogant toward third brother. I couldn't bear it and had a couple words with him. Who would have known he would grab onto Hell King's power and humiliate me? Though third brother is extremely patient, he couldn't overlook it as Shiyu's words put both he and I in an awkward position. If it weren't for third brother's kind character advising me not to use my princess status, I would have properly taught him a lesson that day. Now knowing that, even third brother's kindness didn't make him feel grateful. Unexpectedly, he even plotted to murder third brother in Sealed Dragon Domain. If I had known earlier, I would have had the guards capture this youngster. That way, third brother's life wouldn't have been harmed. After Princess Jinhua finished, those several guards immediately agreed with her words. She had taken the conflict between herself, Shangguan Rei, and Heshi and added oil and vinegar to the tale. When Shangguan Wenji heard the princess, he immediately became angry and sternly said to Heshi, "Do you have anything to say, Shiyu?" Heshi sneered, "Everything has already been said by you guys, what else can I say? You dare say that my Huang'er and guards are lying?" Heshi indifferently replied, "More or less." Immediately, Shangguan Wenji loudly said, "In other words, from that time on, you harbored bad feelings for my son. So in Sealed Dragon Domain, you seized the chance and murdered him?" A laugh appeared on Heshi's face and she looked at Shangguan Wenji with the same gaze she would hold toward an idiot. "Your Majesty, how come I feel you've reversed the story?" Shangguan Jinhua said it herself. That day, the people who had been humiliated were herself and the third prince. What bad feelings do I have? You're talking nonsense. Heshi's words sparked anger in Shangguan Jinhua, causing her to jump forth and defend her words. "It's clearly you who became jealous after seeing His Highness Hell King and I's relationship is so good. You even stopped us from going in and meeting Yugij. Third brother defended me, so you also began hating him. Little sister, your brain is working fine, right?" Heshi couldn't help but start laughing. If I recall correctly, before I even arrived at Mingwang Manor that day, a certain two people had been obstructed by Butler Nan at the door, isn't that right? You said I resent your and His Highness Hell King's relationship? What am I jealous of? You guys were blocked outside. You wouldn't even be able to use the excuse of visiting a sick person in order to get in. Heshi's words were incredibly vulgar and frank, but when the martial artists heard her, they all started lowly laughing. Jinyue's face turned ashen and she pointed a shaking finger at Heshi. However, for the longest time, the only word she could make out was, "You." At this moment, Feng Lianying, who had been sitting beside Feng Yunjing, suddenly stood up and softly said, "Shigongzi, your cultivation is higher than Jinyue Mimi's. How can you speak so overbearingly toward her? Don't tell me that you only know how to bully weak women? Let alone to say, I've known Yugij for many years, he once mentioned me to you. You're nothing more than a lowly doctor's attendant in Mingwang Manor. How can your identity compare to Jinyue Gongzhu and the third princes? How could Mingwang Manor's butler Nan block the third prince and Gongzhu from entering but allow you?" As she was speaking, she wore a rebuking expression on her face. Lightly she said, "Even if you wish to show off slightly and stir up rumors, you shouldn't slander Mingwang Manor's butler in the process." 1. Zhenyu switched to Jinyue. 2. Oil and vinegar. She's added extra details / exaggerated what actually happened. After receiving Feng Lianying's support, Shangguan Jinyue immediately gained confidence again and even her words became harsher. "What Feng Jiejie said is right. You're nothing more than a lowly doctor's attendant. Why would third brother and I go bother with you? Your heart is narrow, so you hate us and plotted to murder third brother. What words do you have to say now? Heshi indifferently replied, Oh, however you guys say it is however it is. I have nothing more to say. Since you've admitted to it, there's no need to continue this trial. Shangguan Wenji immediately waved his hand and loudly proclaimed, Come, immediately arrest him for me. Heshi merely sneered, Is His Majesty's hearing poor? When did I admit I killed him? Don't tell me that disagreeing with someone means that they'll be a murderer? In that case, I heard that the Crown Prince once had an argument with Third Prince at the Imperial Court. Don't tell me that the Third Prince's death means that his Gij, the Crown Prince, is also under suspicion? Originally, the Crown Prince had been quietly sitting in the back, listening to this joke. But once he heard Heshi's words, his face turned unsightly. Shangguan Wenji was even more furious and his body began shaking from the anger. He hated that he couldn't immediately strangle this rude youngster to death. Feng Yunjing cast a cold glance at the dragon throne and the emperor immediately cleared his head. Gently laughing, he said, Since you insist on going this way, don't blame me for being unsightly toward you. Come someone, bring the witnesses out. Once he said that, 2 gold core stage martial artists with scars on their faces were soon brought out. Once she laid eyes on these two, understanding filled Heshi's heart. These two were the 2 gold core stage guards that Shangguan Rui had brought with himself to 100 Herb Mist that day. Together with Shangguan Rui, they both contracted blood-intoxicated poison. After Shangguan Rui died, they each used a magic weapon to exchange for the detoxifying soup. She never thought they would turn into people who would come and testify against herself as a murderer. It really was interesting. When the 2 guards saw the sneer at the corner of Heshi's mouth, they both frantically avoided her gaze, not daring to look at her. At 100 Herb Mist that day, although Heshi required a high price, she was still considered to be their savior. Now, they were going to bite the hand that fed them and testify against their savior in front of all these martial artists. Their conscience was certainly filled with much guilt. But when they thought of the large reward and beautiful future Feng family promised them, they clenched their teeth and forced their faces to remain calm. Shangguan Wenji looked at the 2 of them and loudly said, You 2 accompanied Ruier into sealed dragon domain that day. Now, I'm asking you 2 to relay everything that happened in the secret territory. The 2 first performed the proper ceremony toward the emperor and the various sects in the crowd. Then they started talking. That day, we were in sealed dragon domain's Greenwood realm looking for 100 Herb Mist. After we entered into 100 Herb Mist, we and Third Prince made the mistake of eating a poisonous plant and we were nearly about to die. At this time, this Shiyu Gongzi appeared and said he was a doctor and could detoxify us. However, we had to each give up a precious magic weapon or medicine in order to receive treatment. One of the guards took a small silver bell out from his chest and said, This is a 5th-rank magic weapon passed down from generation to generation in my family. It's called a gold and silver dream spirit bell. This dream spirit bell was originally a pair. Its other half was given to Shiyu that day in order to get an antidote. Isn't that so, Shigongzi? Heshi nodded her head and smiled. That's right. Moreover, this dream spirit bell had long since been given to Gu Liufeng's subordinate, Mei Ru Yen. Chapter 509 Kill him. The guard's mouth hardened and he continued to say, Once we got the antidote, naturally we assumed it was real, so we completely swallowed it. At the beginning, we somewhat improved. But we never thought that bad symptoms would soon show up. The Third Prince had the worst end of the stick. After swallowing the antidote, a long time passed before his entire body unexpectedly burst open and he turned into a puddle of watery blood. The first few claims the guard laid down already caused everyone to go into an uproar, but his final sentence caused everyone to dissolve into a state of complete shock. Moreover, the Third Prince wasn't the only one to die there. The guard turned around to look at the distant crowd and heavily said, On the day, many of the martial artists, from the large sects, also ate Shigongzi's antidote and died. I only personally know that Nalan family's Nalan Yenming alongside Murong family's Murong Zhangfeng and Murong Hai died. We originally had a hard time escaping the fate of turning into watery blood, But fortunately, the Ice Lotus Fairy and the Feng family's people hurried over. In this pressing time, they quickly treated us, saving our lives. Once the guard's words were out, everyone present immediately flared up. They never thought that this little foundation establishment stage martial artist would be able to use poison and kill so many people. Not only was Jin Ling country's third prince among one of the victims, but so were many influential families' elders. Great distress and anger flooded Feng Lianying's face as she looked at Heshi. With a heavy voice she said, "Shigongzi, on that day, when we ran into each other at Water Moon Realm, didn't I advise you? You don't have any of the skills of a doctor. Even if you have a few minor methods, you shouldn't diagnose illnesses and you definitely shouldn't carelessly prescribe medicine. Who would have thought that not only did you not listen, but you also harmed so many people in the process? And when I rushed to 100 Herb Mist, you actually attempted to block me, stating that your way of healing was the right way. If you weren't so selfish, you wouldn't have killed the third prince and so many other innocent people." By now, Feng Lianying's eyes had already turned red. "Shigongzi, you're also a doctor. Don't you know that every life is precious? That each sick person has their own family and friends? If their friends and family knew they died by your hands, they would feel extremely sad and hurt. I'm just regretful that I didn't arrive earlier and wasn't firm enough. Otherwise, you wouldn't have hurt so many lives." The hall's atmosphere had been very tense since the beginning. Now, after Feng Lianying's perfect performance, everyone's emotions were nearly at the bursting point. Especially for those that were a part of sects and influential families that sent their members to the sealed dragon domain. They all fixed their angered gazes at Heshi, practically burning a hole through her. I never thought that this youth who seems to put on airs would actually turn out to be so malicious. This type of person simply doesn't deserve to live in this world anymore. Exactly, how come you guys didn't just directly kill this person on the spot that day? Surprisingly, you actually let him run around for so long. The Ice Lotus Fairy is truly too kind-hearted. My Xian Hisek's people entered sealed dragon domain and never returned. They were most likely harmed by him. Obviously, he doesn't even have a doctor's rank, yet he actually dares to pretend and detoxify others. Now that he's harmed others' lives, don't tell me that a debt of blood can't be paid in blood? Such an utterly heartless person should be thrown into a magic beast pit and die without a burial place. Kill him. Kill him. Let's take revenge for those who've died under this quack. Chapter 5:10 Everyone's angry. Hard to offend. Everyone's angry shouts soon starting filling the large hall. Heshi merely coldly looked on, but didn't speak. She looked like she was merely an observer that had nothing to do with the situation. Suddenly, a slender youth squeezed out from the crowd. He stared Heshi down with a face full of killing intent. "I didn't expect that my Nalan family's elder was actually killed by you. What hatred do you have with my Nalan family for you to so maliciously kill him?" This youth seemed to be around the same age was Nalan Heshi. His appearance was elegant and he even seemed to hold some resemblance to Nalan Jingzi. And Jingling country's Prince Shangguanqi, who had been silently standing in the crowd all along, suddenly slowly walked up to this youth's side. He patted his shoulder and tried placating him. "Xin, you can feel assured. Father Emperor will definitely get revenge for third brother and your Nalan family." Xian? Nalan Xian? It was the original Nalan Heshi's twin, younger, brother. Heshi faced the youth, whose face really resembled Nalan Jingzi's, and a gloomy light flashed through her eyes. The crown prince faintly looked around and sneered. "This brute who completely lacks humanity was let off by us once. But everyone here won't let him off a second time, isn't that right?" Immediately, someone loudly agreed. "The crown prince is right, such a person can't be let off. Take his life for murdering someone. Take his life for murdering someone." Feng Yunjing, who had been silently sitting to the side the entire time, looked at the turbulent circumstances in the hall and a faint smile appeared on his lips. This public trial had been suggested by Shen Xin himself and now it had escalated to this degree. Even if the Shen family was powerful, it was hard to offend everyone when they were angry. They definitely wouldn't protect some insignificant martial artist who was just at foundation establishment stage if it was at the cost of their Qing Xia sect's reputation. Doing so would turn them into the public's enemy. And Shiyu was destined to become an assassin. He would only be able to plead for asylum, there wouldn't be another alternative. Feng Yunjing's gaze landed on Shin Sen, who was sitting opposite to him, and he faintly smiled. Elder Shin, this public trial was first brought up by you. Now all the evidence has been laid out and the trial's outcome has been determined. What other words does Elder Shin have to say now? Shin Sen's face also became extremely unsightly. He always felt this whole affair was odd, but now, everything was pointing toward Shiyu. If he continued to protect Shiyu, he was afraid that Qing Xia sect would be pulled into the waters. Although Shin Sen didn't speak, Shin Qingchua anxiously blurred out everything in her heart. Your so-called evidence is all one-sided. You guys have so many people while Shiyu is all alone, he definitely can't outspeak you guys. If you guys are able to, then bring out decisive evidence. When Feng Lianying saw that they had gotten to this step and Shin Qingchua was still defending him, her gaze toward Heshi became filled with even more hatred. This shameless youth only goes around fooling around with people. Even if he seduced Yu Gij, it's whatever. Now, he actually was able to seduce Qing Xia sect's most beloved person. What was this slut worth? Feng Lianying deeply breathed in before painting on her most tender and friendly expression. She faced Shin Qingchua and said, "Chuer Mimi, the facts are all laid out here. You don't need to believe such lies anymore." Without a second thought, Shin Qingchua immediately replied, "Because Shi Gongzi is a good person, he saved my life." Shin Qingchua was still young and her mind was pure. She completely missed the fact that Feng Lianying was encouraging her to talk. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.